In the shadowed halls of the Carlisle mansion, a crimson veil from an ancient Egyptian tomb holds a deadly secret when Lady Evelyn Carlisle, its enigmatic owner, is found murdered, her throat slit, the veil draped over her face, and a cryptic note proclaiming the veil hides the truth. Master Detective Hercule Poirot is drawn into a web of greed, betrayal, and superstition. Was it a curse that claimed her life, or a cunning killer hiding among the glittering guests? As Poirot unravels the mystery of a secret society, a forged relic, and a hidden passage, each suspect a strange brother, ambitious niece, disgraced archaeologist, and mysterious emigre holds a piece of the puzzle. With every clue, the question burns: who wielded the ceremonial dagger, and what truth does the veil conceal? Dive into the secret of the Crimson Veil, where every shadow hides a secret, and only Poirot's brilliant mind can unveil the killer. Chapter 1. The Lady in the Veil. Fog hung low over London, a shroud of gray that clung to the cobblestones of Mayfair like a reluctant guest. It was the evening of November 12, 1935, and the air carried the crisp bite of autumn, mingling with the faint aroma of coal smoke and the promise of intrigue. Hercule Poirot, his polished shoes clicking with precision on the pavement, adjusted his overcoat against the chill. Beside him, Captain Arthur Hastings, ever the loyal companion, strode with a touch of nervous excitement, his breath visible in the damp air. "Poirot, old chap," Hastings said, glancing at the elegant invitation in his gloved hand. "This soiree at the Carlisle mansion sounds like quite the affair. Lady Evelyn Carlisle, collector of antiquities, fancy that, do you suppose we'll see some of those Egyptian treasures she's always banging on about?" Poirot's mustache twitched, a subtle sign of amusement. "Mon ami, Lady Evelyn is not one to bang on, as you say. She is a woman of taste, of discernment. Her collection, I am told, is magnifique, particularly this crimson veil, a relic from an Egyptian priestess's tomb. But it is not the artifacts alone that interest Poirot. It is the people who gather around them. Where there is wealth and rarity, there is often, how do you say, a motive." Hastings chuckled, though his eyes darted to the looming silhouette of the Carlisle mansion ahead. Its Georgian facade, illuminated by the soft glow of gas lamps, stood as a beacon of opulence amidst the fog. Tall windows gleamed, and the faint strains of a string quartet drifted into the night. "Motives, eh? You're always sniffing out trouble, Poirot. I say, let's enjoy the champagne and leave the sleuthing for another day." Poirot's green eyes glinted. "Trouble, Hastings, does not wait for an invitation, and tonight, I feel it in the air." They ascended the marble steps, greeted by a butler whose stiff posture rivaled Poirot's own. The invitation, embossed with gold, was inspected with a nod, and they were ushered into a grand foyer. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over polished mahogany and Persian rugs. Guests in evening dress mingled, their laughter punctuated by the clink of glasses. The air was thick with perfume, cigar smoke, and anticipation. Lady Evelyn Carlisle stood at the center of it all, a vision. In emerald silk, her auburn hair swept into an elegant chignon. She was in her late 40s, with a regal bearing that commanded attention. Her eyes, sharp and assessing, softened as they fell on Poirot. "Monsieur Poirot," she exclaimed, gliding toward him. "And Captain Hastings, how delightful. I am honored you could attend my little gathering." Poirot bowed, his hand brushing the brim of his hat. "Madam, the honor is mine. Your reputation as a collector precedes you, and I am eager to see this crimson veil of which all London speaks." Lady Evelyn's smile was enigmatic. "Oh, you shall see it, Monsieur Poirot. It is the centerpiece of tonight's unveiling, a relic of such beauty and mystery. But come, let me introduce you to my guests." She led them through the throng, her voice carrying over the murmur of conversation. First was Lord Reginald Carlisle, her elder brother, a man of 50 with a ruddy complexion and a mustache that rivaled Poirot's in grandeur. His tailored suit did little to hide his unease, His eyes darted about as if expecting a creditor at every turn. "Reginald, do behave," Lady Evelyn teased. "Monsieur Poirot is not here to audit your accounts." Reginald forced a laugh. "A pleasure, Monsieur Poirot. I trust you'll find Evelyn's obsession with dusty relics amusing. I prefer horses to hieroglyphs, myself." Next was Clara Beaumont, Lady Evelyn's niece. A striking young woman of 25 with jet black hair and a calculating gaze. Her crimson gown matched the rumored veil, a bold choice that drew whispers. "Clara is my heir," Lady Evelyn said, her tone neutral. "She has a keen interest in my collection, perhaps too keen." Clara's lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "And Evelyn exaggerates, Monsieur Poirot. I merely appreciate beauty." Dr. Felix Mortimer, a weary archaeologist with spectacles perched on a sharp nose, was introduced next. His hands fidgeted as he spoke of the veil's origins. "A remarkable find from Luxor," he said, "the tomb of a priestess of Hathor. Circa 1200 BC, the veil is said to carry her blessing or her curse." Poirot raised an eyebrow. "A curse, monsieur? Surely you, a man of science, do not believe such tales?" Mortimer flushed. "Science explains much, but not all. The veil's history is unsettling." Finally, Madame Irina Volkov, a Russian émigré, approached with the grace of a panther. Her silver gown shimmered, and her accent was thick with mystery. "Monsieur Poirot, I have heard of your little gray cells. They say you see what others." Miss Poirot inclined his head. "And you, madam, what do you see in this veil?" Her eyes darkened. "Power, danger, secrets." The evening progressed with champagne and canapes. But Poirot's attention was fixed on the guests. Reginald's forced joviality, Clara's guarded glances, Mortimer's nervous tics, and Volkov's cryptic remarks formed a tapestry of suspicion. At precisely 10 o'clock, Lady Evelyn clapped her hands, silencing the room. "My friends," she announced, "the moment has arrived. Follow me to the gallery, where the crimson veil awaits." The guests filed into a long room lined with glass cases, each containing artifact scarabs, amulets, a gilded mask. At the far end, on a velvet pedestal, lay the crimson veil, its fabric shimmering like blood under the chandelier's light. It was diaphanous, embroidered with gold threads and patterns that seemed to shift as one stared. A collective gasp rose from the crowd. "It is exquisite," Hastings whispered. "It is dangerous," Poirot murmured, his eyes scanning the room. Lady Evelyn began to speak of the veil's history, but her words were cut short by a piercing scream from the back of the house. The guests froze, and Poirot's hand tightened on his cane. "Stay here," he ordered Hastings, striding toward the sound. He followed a maid's trembling directions to Lady Evelyn's private study, a room of dark wood and heavy curtains. The door was ajar, and inside, a horrific sight awaited. Lady Evelyn lay slumped across her desk, her emerald gown stained with blood. The crimson veil, impossibly, was draped over her face, its edges pulling like liquid. A ceremonial dagger, its blade etched with hieroglyphs, protruded from her throat. A crumpled note lay clutched in her hand. Poirot knelt, careful not to disturb the scene. He gently lifted the note, reading the scrawled words. "The veil hides the truth." The room was locked from the inside, the only key in Lady Evelyn's pocket. The window was bolted, the curtains undisturbed. Hastings arrived, bowing at the sight. "Good God, Poirot, is she tué, mon ami? Lady Evelyn is dead, murdered." Inspector Japp, summoned by a frantic butler, burst into the room, his face grim. "Blimey, Poirot, what's this?" "A locked room, a cursed veil, and a dagger straight out of a mummy's tomb. This is madness." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Not madness, Inspector. Method. The veil, the dagger, the note, they are not accidents. They are a performance, and Hercule Poirot will uncover the director of this tragedy." The guests were herded into the drawing room, their faces a mix of shock and fear. Poirot paced, His mind racing, the locked room suggested an impossible crime, yet the note hinted at a deeper truth. Was the veil a motive, a symbol, or a distraction? And why was it moved from the gallery to the study? He turned to Jap. We must search the house, question the guests, and examine this veil. The little gray cells, they are already at work. As the police began their work, Poirot's gaze lingered on the crimson veil, now in Jap's evidence bag. Its threads seemed to pulse with secrets, daring him to unravel them. The night had begun with elegance and ended in death. But Poirot knew this was merely the opening act. The chapter closed with the guests' murmurs fading into the fog. Poirot standing alone in the study, his mind a whirl of possibilities. The truth, he vowed, would not remain veiled for long. Chapter 2. The circle of suspects. The grand hall of the Carlyle mansion was a cavern of opulence, its walls adorned with gilded portraits and tapestries that whispered of old money and older secrets. The air still carried the faint tang of champagne and the murmur of the soiree that had ended in tragedy only hours before. Lady Evelyn Carlyle lay dead in her study, the crimson veil draped over her face like a shroud, her throat slit by a ceremonial dagger. The locked room, the cryptic note clutched in her hand. The veil hides the truth, and Hercule Poirot's declaration of murder had set the stage for a mystery that now pulsed through the mansion. Like a living thing, Poirot stood at the center of the hall, his small, precise figure dwarfed by the towering marble columns. His mustache twitched as he surveyed the remaining guests, who had been detained by Inspector Jap's men. The police had cordoned off the study, and the guests, a mix of high society and dubious characters, milled about in a state of uneasy agitation. Captain Hastings, ever the loyal companion, stood at Poirot's side, his notebook open, his pen poised to capture every detail. Mon ami, Poirot said, his voice low but carrying the weight of authority. We must now turn our attention to the players in this drama. Each guest, each motive, each secret is like a tapestry. We must unravel the threads to find the truth. Hastings nodded, his brow furrowed. It's a grim business, Poirot. Lady Evelyn was well-liked, wasn't she? Who'd want to kill her in such a ghastly way? Poirot's eyes gleamed. That, Hastings, is precisely what we shall discover. The heart of man is a labyrinth, and within it lies the answer. Let us begin with the questioning. Inspector Jap, a stocky man with a bulldog's tenacity, approached them, his face etched with frustration. Poirot, I've got my men combing the study, but it's a locked room. Blasted, no windows, no secret passages, at least none we've found yet, and that veil that gives me the creeps. You sure this isn't some occult nonsense? Poirot's lips curled into a faint smile. Non, Inspector. The veil is but a prop in this theater of murder. The human hand, not the supernatural, wielded the dagger. Now, let us meet our cast of characters. The first to be questioned was Lord Reginald Carlyle, Lady Evelyn's estranged brother. He was a tall, gaunt man in his late 50s, with a hawkish nose and eyes that darted nervously. His tailored suit was impeccable, but his hands trembled as he lit a cigarette, the smoke curling upward like a specter. Lord Reginald, Poirot began, his tone polite but probing. You and your sister were not close, n'est-ce pas? Reginald exhaled sharply, his lips tightening. Evelyn and I had our differences. She was obsessed with her antiquities, always chasing myths and curses. I thought it was foolishness. We hadn't spoken in years until she invited me to this damn soiree. And yet, Poirot said, leaning forward, you attended. Why? Reginald hesitated, his fingers twitching around the cigarette. She wrote to me, said she wanted to reconcile. I thought perhaps there was a chance to mend things. And, well, there's the matter of the estate. Evelyn was wealthy, and I mean not as fortunate as I once was. Hastings scribbled furiously, glancing at Poirot. You mean you needed her money? Reginald's eyes flashed. That's a crude way to put it, Captain. I'm her brother. If she passed, naturally I'd expect to inherit something. But I didn't kill her for it, if that's what you're implying." Poirot's gaze was unyielding. "And where were you, monsieur, when Lady Evelyn was found dead in the ballroom with the others?" Reginald snapped. "I was talking to the Russian woman Madame Volkov about some nonsense regarding the veil. Ask her. She'll confirm it." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "Merci, Lord Reginald. We shall speak again." Next came Clara Beaumont, Lady Evelyn's niece. She was a striking woman in her late 20s, with sharp cheekbones and auburn hair pinned in an elegant chignon. Her emerald dress shimmered in the candlelight, but her eyes were red-rimmed, betraying either grief or something else entirely. "Miss Beaumont," Poirot said, his voice softening, "you were close to your aunt." Clara nodded, dabbing at her eyes with a lace handkerchief. "Aunt Evelyn was like a mother to me. She took me in after my parents died. I can't believe she's gone, and in such a horrible way." Hastings, ever susceptible to a pretty face, leaned forward sympathetically. "It must be dreadful for you, Miss Beaumont. Did you notice anything unusual tonight? Anyone acting strangely?" Clara hesitated, her fingers twisting the handkerchief. Everyone was fascinated by the veil. Aunt Evelyn loved to show it off, but she was nervous tonight. She kept looking at Dr. Mortimer, as if she didn't trust him. And well, Madame Volkov was hovering around her all evening. It was odd. Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And you, mademoiselle, where were you when the tragedy occurred?" "I was in the library," Clara said quickly. "I needed a moment alone. The crowd was overwhelming." "Alone?" Poirot asked, his tone gentle but pointed. "In a mansion full of guests?" Clara flushed. "Yes, alone. I don't like crowds. I slipped away for a few minutes." "Surely, you don't think I had anything to do with this?" Poirot smiled thinly. "I think only of the truth, mademoiselle. Merci for your time." The third suspect was Dr. Felix Mortimer, an archaeologist with a reputation for brilliance and arrogance. He was a weary man in his 40s, with thinning hair and spectacles that magnified his restless eyes. He carried himself with the air of someone accustomed to being the smartest in the room. "Dr. Mortimer," Poirot began, "you authenticated the crimson veil, did you not?" Mortimer adjusted his spectacles. His voice clipped. "I did. It's a remarkable artifact. From the tomb of a priestess in Luxor, 4th dynasty, I'd wager." Evelyn was thrilled when I confirmed its provenance. "And yet," Poirot said, "there are whispers that the veil may not be as ancient as claimed. Were you aware of such doubts?" Mortimer's jaw tightened. "Nonsense. I examined it thoroughly. If there's any question of its authenticity, it's news to me." Evelyn trusted my judgment. Hastings raised an eyebrow. "Trusted it enough to argue with you. Some guests overheard you and Lady Evelyn exchanging sharp words before the soiree." Mortimer's face reddened. "A professional disagreement, nothing more. She questioned my methods, but we resolved it. I was in the ballroom when she died, surrounded by people. Check with them." Poirot nodded, his fingers steepled. "We shall, doctor." "Merci beaucoup." The final suspect was Madame Irina Volkov, a Russian émigré whose dark beauty and enigmatic demeanor had drawn every eye at the soiree. Her black gown clung to her like a shadow, and her eyes, sharp and calculating, met Poirot's without flinching. "Madame Volkov," Poirot said, "you are a stranger to many here. Yet Lady Evelyn invited you. Why?" Irina's lips curved into a faint smile. "Evelyn and I shared a passion for antiquities. We met in Cairo 2 years ago, at an auction. She valued my knowledge of ancient rituals. The crimson veil fascinated us both." "And your whereabouts at the time of her death?" Poirot asked. "I was with Lord Reginald, as he told you," Irina said smoothly. "We discussed the veil's history. I found his skepticism amusing." Hastings frowned. "You didn't notice anything suspicious? No one slipping away?" Irina's smile widened, almost mocking. "In a room full of people, Captain, one does not notice absences. but I assure you, I was where I said I was." Poirot dismissed her with a nod, but his eyes lingered on her retreating figure. "A most interesting woman," he murmured to Hastings. "She speaks with the confidence of one who hides much." With the initial interviews concluded, Poirot, Hastings, and Japp retreated to the mansion's library, a vast room lined with leather-bound tomes and heavy oak furniture. Japp slumped into a chair, rubbing his temples. "Well, Poirot, what do you make of it? They've all got alibis, flimsy as they are. In that locked room, how the devil did the killer get in and out?" Poirot paced slowly, his hands clasped behind his back. "The locked room, Inspector, is a puzzle, but not an impossible one. The solution lies not in the mechanics of the lock, but in the motives of those present. Each suspect has a reason to wish Lady Evelyn harm: money, jealousy, professional ruin. But there is more here, something deeper." Hastings flipped through his notes. "Reginald's after the inheritance. Clara's got her aunt's favor. Mortimer's reputation is on the line. And Volkov, well, she's a mystery. But what about that note? The veil hides the truth. What does it mean?" Poirot stopped, pacing, his eyes alight. "The note, Hastings, is the key. It is not merely a poetic flourish. It points to a secret Lady Evelyn knew, a secret someone killed to protect. We must search her study more thoroughly." The trio returned to the study, where the air was thick with the scent of old books and the metallic tang of blood. Lady Evelyn's body had been removed, but the crimson veil lay on a table, its fabric shimmering under the lamplight. Poirot examined the desk, his fingers tracing the polished wood until he found a hidden catch. A small drawer sprang open, revealing a torn photograph. Poirot held it up to the light. The image showed four figures in veiled robes, standing in what appeared to be a candlelit chamber. One face was obscured, torn away, but the others were unmistakable: Lady Evelyn, Dr. Mortimer, and Madame Volkov. The fourth figure was a mystery. "Mon Dieu," Poirot whispered. "This is no ordinary photograph. It is evidence of a secret society, the Order of the Crimson Veil. Perhaps Lady Evelyn was part of something clandestine, and this image holds the clue to her death." Japp frowned. "A secret society sounds like something out of a penny dreadful. You think this order is behind the murder?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Not the order itself, perhaps, but one of its members. The torn face someone did not wish to be identified. We must learn who this fourth figure is." Hastings stared at the photograph, his mind racing. "But how do we find out? The face is gone, and none of the suspects are likely to confess." Poirot smiled faintly. "Patience, mon ami. The truth is like a shadow, it cannot hide forever. We shall question our suspects again, but first, we must uncover the secrets of this order. The photograph is our guide, and the veil is the heart of it all." The chapter closed with the trio standing in the dim study, the crimson veil casting an eerie glow across the room. Poirot's mind was already at work, piecing together the fragments of motive, opportunity, and deception. The Order of the Crimson Veil loomed like a specter, its secrets waiting to be unveiled. And Poirot knew that the next phase of the investigation would bring them closer to the killer. The questioning had only scratched the surface, and Poirot's methodical mind was already spinning a web to trap the truth. The suspects, each with their own shadows, had revealed just enough to deepen the mystery. Lord Reginald's desperation for money was palpable, his alibi dependent on a woman whose own motives were unclear. Clara's grief seemed genuine, but her quick answers and solitary moment in the library raised questions. Dr. Mortimer's professional pride was a fragile thing, easily shattered by a scandal over the veil's authenticity. And Madame Volkov, her poise was a mask, hiding a past that refused to stay buried. Poirot's discovery of the photograph had shifted the investigation. The Order of the Crimson Veil was no mere rumor. It was a tangible thread connecting the suspects. But what was its purpose? Was it a cult, a cabal of collectors, or something more sinister? The torn face in the photograph gnawed at Poirot's thoughts. Was it a deliberate act of concealment, or had the photograph been damaged by chance? As the night wore on, the mansion seemed to close in around them, its grandeur tainted by the stain of murder. Poirot stood by the study's window, gazing out at the moonlit gardens. The truth is there, Hastings, he said softly. It is hidden, but not invisible. We must follow the threads, the veil, the note, the photograph. They will lead us to the killer. Hastings shivered, glancing at the crimson veil. I don't like it, Poirot. There's something wrong about the thing. What if the curse is real? Poirot chuckled, a rare sound in the grim atmosphere. There is no curse, mon ami, only human greed and fear. The veil is a symbol, nothing more. But symbols can inspire terrible deeds. Jap joined them, his face weary. I've got men checking the alibis, but it's slow work. Half the guests were too drunk to remember where they were. What's our next move? Poirot turned from the window, his expression resolute. We must learn more about this order, its members, its rituals, its purpose. Tomorrow, we shall visit the British Museum. Dr. Mortimer's knowledge may unlock the veil's history, and Madame Volkov's past must be explored. The photograph is our map, and we shall follow it. The night ended with the suspects confined to their rooms, the mansion under police watch. Poirot retired to a guest chamber, but sleep eluded him. His mind churned with possibilities, each suspect a piece in the puzzle. The Order of the Crimson Veil held the key, and Poirot was determined to unlock its secrets. The photograph, with its torn face and veiled figures, was the first true clue, setting the stage for the investigation to plunge deeper into the shadows of Lady Evelyn's world. The following morning, the mansion was quieter, the revelry of the previous night replaced by a somber tension. Poirot, Hastings, and Jap reconvened in the library, where the torn photograph lay on a table, its edges frayed, but its significance undeniable. Poirot examined it again, his magnifying glass catching the light. Observe, Hastings, he said, pointing to the obscured figure. The tear is precise, not accidental. Someone wished this person's identity to remain hidden. But the other three, Lady Evelyn, Dr. Mortimer, Madame Volkov, they are clear. Why leave them exposed? Hastings frowned. Maybe the killer didn't have time to destroy the whole photograph. Perhaps, Poirot said, but I think not. The tear is a message, a deliberate act. We must find the missing piece, or at least deduce who it represents. Jab scratched his head. You're sure this order is real? Could be Evelyn was just playing at being mysterious. Rich folk love their secret clubs. Poirot shook his head. Inspector, the order is real, and it is dangerous. Lady Evelyn's note, the veil hides the truth, suggests she knew something that threatened someone. The order may be the key to the truth. The trio decided to split their efforts. Jap would continue verifying alibis and searching the mansion for physical evidence. Hastings would dig into the backgrounds of the suspects, starting with Madame Volkov's murky past. Poirot, meanwhile, would pursue the historical angle, beginning with a visit to Dr. Mortimer at the British Museum. Before they parted, Poirot returned to the study one last time. The crimson veil still lay on the table, its fabric seeming to pulse with a life of its own. He lifted it carefully, noting its weight and texture. A remarkable piece, he murmured. But is it truly ancient, or is it, too, a deception? Hastings watched, uneasy. You think it's a fake? I think, Poirot said, that everything in this case is not what it seems. The veil, the order, the suspects, they all wear masks. Our task is to remove them. With the photograph tucked safely in his pocket, Poirot prepared for the day ahead. The Order of the Crimson Veil was no longer a shadow. It was a tangible force, and its secrets were tied to Lady Evelyn's death. The torn photograph was the first step, a clue that would lead them deeper into the labyrinth of motives and lies. The circle of suspects was closing, and Poirot's little gray cells were already at work. Unraveling the truth hidden beneath the crimson veil. Chapter 3. Shadows of the past morning after the turbulent night at the Carlyle mansion. The air in London carried a damp chill, as if the city itself mourned Lady Evelyn Carlisle's untimely death. Hercule Poirot, dressed impeccably in a charcoal overcoat and polished shoes, stepped out of his flat at Whitehaven Mansions, his cane tapping rhythmically on the cobblestones. Captain Hastings, ever his loyal companion, followed, adjusting his scarf against the autumn breeze. The two men were bound for the British Museum, where Dr. Felix Mortimer, the archaeologist who had authenticated the Crimson Veil, awaited them. Poirot's mind buzzed with the fragments of the case, the cryptic note, the locked room, the veiled figures in the torn photograph. He was determined to unravel the veil's origins and the secrets it guarded. Poirot, old chap, do you really think this veil business is more than superstition? Hastings asked, his brow furrowed as they boarded a cab. I mean, a curse. It's all rather fantastical, isn't it? Poirot's mustache twitched with a faint smile. Mon ami, the human mind is far more fantastical than any curse. The veil may be a relic, but it is the motives of those who coveted that interest me. Dr. Mortimer, he knows more than he has revealed. We shall see what truths lie beneath his scholarly facade. The cab rattled through Bloomsbury, its wheels clattering over the uneven streets. The British Museum loomed ahead, its grand columns standing like sentinels of history inside. The air was thick with the scent of old stone and polished wood. Dr. Mortimer met them in a cluttered office tucked behind the Egyptian wing, surrounded by shelves of dusty tomes and glass cases displaying fragments of ancient pottery. The archaeologist was a weary man in his late 40s, with sharp features and eyes that darted nervously behind wire-rimmed spectacles. His desk was strewn with papers, and a half-finished sketch of the Crimson Veil lay prominently atop the pile. Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings, Mortimer greeted, his voice clipped but polite. I trust you're here to discuss poor Evelyn's collection. A tragedy, her passing. She was a passionate collector. Passionate, and perhaps imprudent, Poirot said, settling into a chair with deliberate grace. The Crimson Veil. Dr. Mortimer, it is the centerpiece of this tragedy, is it not? Tell me of its origins. From where does it come, and why does it inspire such fear? Mortimer hesitated, his fingers drumming on the desk. The veil is an extraordinary artifact, recovered from a dig in Luxor in 1922. It belonged to a priestess of Sekhmet, the lioness goddess of war and healing. The tomb's inscriptions warned that those who disturbed her rest would face her wrath, a curse. If you will, Evelyn acquired it through unconventional means. Unconventional? Poirot's eyes gleamed. You mean stolen, perhaps. Mortimer's face flushed. Not stolen, precisely. The dig was funded by private collectors, and the veil was redirected from the Egyptian authorities. Evelyn was adamant about possessing it. She believed it held spiritual power. Hastings leaned forward, intrigued. And you authenticated it. Doctor, you're certain it's genuine? Mortimer nodded, though his confidence seemed strained. The weave, the dyes, the inscriptions, all consistent with artifacts from the New Kingdom period. I stake my reputation on it. Poirot's gaze lingered on the sketch of the veil, its intricate patterns rendered in meticulous detail. And yet, Dr. Mortimer, you seem uneasy. Did Lady Evelyn share your certainty, or did she, perhaps, suspect otherwise? The archaeologist shifted in his seat. Evelyn was a trouble during her last trip to Egypt 6 months ago, she confided, and me that she felt watched, as if the veil's curse followed her. I dismissed it as nerves. But she was insistent. She mentioned a rival collector who threatened her, though she never named him. Poirot's fingers steepled beneath his chin. A rival collector, you say? And this trip to Egypt, what did she seek there? Mortimer hesitated, then reached for a leather-bound journal on his desk. She was researching the priestess's tomb further. She believed there was a second artifact, a ceremonial dagger, that completed the veil's ritual. She never found it, but she returned to London more secretive than ever. Poirot's eyes narrowed. The dagger, Dr. Mortimer, describe it. It's mentioned in the tomb's text, a blade with a lotus-shaped hilt inlaid with lapis lazuli. The priestess used it in offerings to Sekhmet. Evelyn thought it was still buried in Luxor, but she was cagey about her sources. Hastings frowned, recalling the murder scene. A dagger, you say? That sounds awfully like the one found in Lady Evelyn's throat. Precisement, Poirot murmured. And yet, the room was locked, the windows barred. A dagger from a tomb, a veil from a priestess, and a woman dead with a note in her hand. Dr. Mortimer, you will provide me with your notes from the Luxor dig and any correspondence with Lady Evelyn. Mortimer bristled but nodded. Very well, but I assure you, I had no part in her death. I was at a lecture the night of the soiree. We shall verify the natural element, Poirot said, rising. For now, I thank you for your candor. But know this, Doctor, the truth, it has a way of revealing itself, like sand slipping through one's fingers. As they left the museum, Hastings couldn't shake the image of the veil, its crimson thread seeming to pulse with secrets. Do you believe him, Poirot, about the curse and all that? Poirot's expression was unreadable. I believe, Hastings, that men create their own curses. The veil may be ancient, but it is the living who wield its power. Come, we have another task. Their next stop was a small, cluttered office near Fleet Street, home to the London Whisper, a gossip rag known for its scandalous tidbits. Hastings had recalled a snippet from the previous week's column. Buried among society chatter, a certain lady collector, lately returned from the sands of Egypt, has been seen in the company of a dashing stranger. Could love be the true treasure she seeks? The implication was clear. Evelyn had a secret lover, and Hastings was eager to pursue the lead. The editor, a portly man named Harold Grimsby, greeted them with a sly grin. Poirot and Hastings, come to sniff out some gossip for your little investigation. I heard about Lady Carlisle. Nasty business, indeed, Monsieur Grimsby, Poirot said, his tone polite but firm. We are interested in a particular column. A lady collector and her mysterious companion, you will tell us. Who provided this information? Grimsby chuckled, lighting a cigar. Gossip's a trade, Mr. Poirot. My sources don't come cheap, but for you, I'll throw a bone. The tip came from a society girl, Clara Beaumont. Said her aunt was cozying up to some foreign chap at the Ritz. All hush-hush. Clara's got a sharp eye and a sharper tongue. Clara Beaumont, Poirot repeated, his mind racing. Lady Evelyn's niece. And this foreign gentleman, what did she say of him? Not much, Grimsby admitted. Dark hair, foreign accent, maybe Russian or French. Clara saw them dining together, said Evelyn looked smitten, but nervous. That's all I've got. Hastings scribbled in his notebook. A lover, Poirot, that could change everything. Jealousy, betrayal motives aplenty, perhaps. Mon ami, Poirot said, his eyes distant. But we must tread carefully. Gossip is a shadow, not the substance. We return to the mansion. There is something I must see. Back at the Carlisle mansion, the household was in disarray. Servants whispered in corners, and Inspector Japp was overseeing a second sweep of the crime scene. Poirot, however, was drawn to Lady Evelyn's private quarters, a richly appointed room filled with artifact statues of Anubis, scarab amulets, and papyrus scrolls. On her writing desk, he found a locked ledger bound in red leather, its cover embossed with a lotus motif. Japp, my friend, Poirot called. You will have this open, we? A lockpick, if you please. Japp, ever practical, summoned a constable with the necessary skills. The ledger sprang open, revealing pages of meticulous entries, dates, sums, and cryptic initials. Poirot's finger traced the lines, pausing. At a recurring entry, payments to V, totaling thousands of pounds over the past year. V. Hastings mused. Could it be Volkov? Madame Irina Volkov? An excellent supposition, Poirot said, his voice low. But we must not leap to conclusions. The ledger. It is coded. See here the numbers. They are not merely sums. They correspond to dates and places for hours. Poirot pored over the ledger, his little gray cells working at fever pitch. By late afternoon, he had cracked the first entry, a payment of £500 to V on March 12, 1925, coinciding with a trip to Paris where Madame Volkov was known to have stayed. The entry noted a meeting at the Hôtel de Crillon, with a single word scrawled beside it, Vale. Madame Volkov, Poirot said, closing the ledger with a snap. She is more than a guest at this soirée, Hastings. She is entwined with the Vale's journey, and perhaps with Lady Evelyn's fate as dusk fell. The mansion's shadows deepened, mirroring the growing complexity of the case. Poirot stood by the window, gazing at the garden where the soiree's lights had sparkled only days ago. The past, Hastings. It casts long shadows. Lady Evelyn secrets her lover, her order. Her veil, they are threads in a tapestry. We must weave them together to see the pattern. Hastings nodded, though his mind swirled with questions. What's our next move, Poirot? We return to the suspects. Poirot said, his voice resolute. Madame Volkov, she must explain. These payments, and Clara Beaumont, she knows more of this lover than she has admitted. The truth, it lies in the spaces between their words. Chapter 4. The midnight introderth moon hung low over the Carlyle mansion, casting long shadows across its manicured lawns. Hercule Poirot, his coat collar turned up against the autumn chill, stood beside Captain Hastings in the gravel drive, their breath visible in the crisp night air. The mansion loomed before them, its windows dark save for a faint glow from the upper floors. The soirée and its grim aftermath were tonight's past, but the house seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for another secret to spill. Poirot adjusted his hat, his sharp eyes scanning the foyer. Hastings, mon ami, the truth lies not in what we saw that night, but in what we did not. We returned to the scene of the crime to catch it unawares. Hastings, ever the loyal companion, shifted uncomfortably, his hand resting on the revolver, tucked into his coat pocket. I don't like it, Poirot. Sneaking about in the dead of night, it's not exactly sporting. What if we're caught? Poirot's mustache twitched with a faint smile. Sporting, you say? Murder, my friend, is not a game of cricket. The killer does not play by rules, and so we must be creative. Come. We enter through the servants' door. They move silently, skirting the rose garden to reach the rear of the mansion. The servants' entrance, a narrow door half hidden by ivy, was unlocked, a detail Poirot noted with a raised eyebrow. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of polished wood and lingering cigar smoke from the soirée. The corridors were dim, lit only by the occasional flicker of a wall sconce. Poirot led the way, his steps precise, as if he had memorized the mansion's layout during their earlier visits. Their destination was Lady Evelyn Carlyle's study, where her body had been found. The crimson veil draped over her face like a shroud. The room had been sealed by Inspector Japp, but Poirot had persuaded the local constable to grant them access for a private investigation. The police, they see what is obvious, Poirot had said earlier. We, Hastings, must see what is hidden. The study door was ajar, its police tape broken. Poirot froze, his hand signaling Hastings to stop. A faint rustle came from within, followed by the soft creak of a floorboard. Hastings' grip tightened on his revolver, but Poirot shook his head, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. The game, it begins, he whispered. They slipped inside, moving like shadows. The study was as they remembered, a grand oak desk, shelves lined with ancient artifacts, and the heavy curtains drawn tight. A single lamp cast a weak glow, revealing a figure hunched over the desk, rifling through papers. The figure was slight, cloaked in a dark shawl, their movements frantic yet cautious. Poirot cleared his throat softly. Bonsoir, mademoiselle. You search for something, perhaps, The figure spun around, gasping. It was Clara Beaumont, Lady Evelyn's niece, her face pale in the lamplight, her eyes wide with fear. Her auburn hair was disheveled, and her hands clutched a bundle of papers. Monsieur Poirot. Captain Hastings, I didn't expect clearly, Poirot said, stepping forward, his voice calm, but edged with steel. One does not expect to be caught. None. May I ask what brings you to your aunt's study at such an hour? Clara's lips trembled, but she straightened, regaining her composure. I have every right to be here. This is my family's home. I was looking for something personal. A letter from Aunt Evelyn. Poirot tilted his head, his gaze piercing. A letter, you say, and yet you search her desk like a thief in the night. Curious, is it not, Hastings? Hastings nodded, his hand still near his revolver. Rather suspicious, I'd say. What's in those papers, Miss Beaumont? Clara clutched the papers tighter, her knuckles whitening. They're private, family matters. You wouldn't understand. Poirot stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. Perhaps I understand more than you think. Allow me to see, mademoiselle, or I shall be forced to call Inspector Japp. Reluctantly, Clara handed over the papers. Poirot scanned them quickly, letters, receipts, and a few legal documents, none of which seemed remarkable at first glance. But his fingers paused on a single sheet, its edges crumpled. It was a draft of a will, unsigned, naming Clara as the sole heir to Lady Evelyn's estate, with a curious condition. She must renounce all ties to the Order of the Crimson Veil. Poirot's eyebrows rose. This is most interesting, mademoiselle. You claim to search for a letter, yet you find a will that makes you very rich, and this condition abandoning the order. Why would your aunt demand such a thing? Clara's eyes darted to the floor. I don't know. Aunt Evelyn was eccentric. She believed in all sorts of nonsense about curses and secret societies. I just want what's rightfully mine. Uncle Reginald, he's in debt, you know. He'd squander everything if he got his hands on it. Hastings frowned, protecting. Your inheritance, sounds like a motive to me. Poirot waved a hand dismissively. Motive. Yes, but let us not leap to conclusions, mon ami. Mademoiselle Clara, you will explain why you broke the police seal to enter this room. Clara hesitated, then sighed. I heard rumors that Aunt Evelyn hid another will, one that might cut me out. I had to know. Reginald's been acting strange, sneaking around, burning papers. I don't trust him. Poirot nodded slowly, his mind clearly turning over her words as he handed the papers back to Clara. A faint scent caught his attention, jasmine, delicate but unmistakable. It lingered on the papers, on Clara's shawl, and in the air around her. His eyes narrowed. Your perfume, mademoiselle. It is most distinctive. Jasmine, weak Clara blushed, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Yes, it's my favorite. Why does it matter? Poirot did not answer, his gaze drifting to the window. A sudden noise, a sharp crack from outside broke the tension. Hastings rushed to the curtains, pulling them back to reveal the dark garden below. A shadow moved swiftly across the lawn, a cloaked figure vanishing into the trees after him. Hastings shouted, already halfway to the door. Poirot grabbed his arm. Non, Hastings. We do not chase shadows, we observe. He pointed to the floor near the window, where a small object glinted in the lamplight. Hastings picked it up, a silver cufflink, engraved with a stylized veil, the symbol of the Order of the Crimson Veil. Poirot examined it closely, his expression unreadable. This, mon ami, is no accident. Our intruder wished to be seen, or, at least, to leave a trace. But why? They searched the garden but found no further clues. The figure had vanished, leaving only the cufflink and the lingering questions it raised. Back in the study, Poirot paced, his hands clasped behind his back. The will, the perfume, the cufflink, all pieces of the puzzle, but they do not yet fit. Clara searches for her inheritance, yet someone else searches too. For what, I wonder? Hastings rubbed his chin. The cufflink gets the orders. Symbol. Could it be one of them? Dr. Mortimer, perhaps, or the Russian woman, Volkov? Poirot shook his head. Patience, Hastings. The order is a shadow, but the killer is flesh and blood. We must consider the jasmine. It is not only Mademoiselle Clara who favors it. I recall a certain Madame Volkov wearing a similar scent. At the soiree, Clara, still lingering by the desk, bristled. You can't think Irina had anything to do with this. She was Aunt Evelyn's friend. They were close, always whispering about that ridiculous order. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Close. You say, close enough to know of hidden wills, perhaps, or to share secrets of the order. Tell me, Mademoiselle, what do you know of Madame Volkov's past? Clara hesitated, her fingers twisting the edge of her shawl. Not much. She came to London a few years ago, after the war in Russia. Aunt Evelyn took her in. Said she was a kindred spirit. But Irina's private. She doesn't talk about her life before. Poirot nodded, filing the information away. Merci. Mademoiselle, you may go, but do not leave the mansion. We shall speak again, as Clara slipped out. Hastings turned to Poirot. She's hiding something, isn't she? That will is too convenient. And that jasmine scent, it's all over the place. Poirot smiled faintly. The scent, Hastings, is a thread. It binds Clara, Volkov, and perhaps our intruder. But we must pull carefully, lest it break. They spent the next hour searching the study, but the papers yielded no further secrets. The draft will was the only significant find, its condition about the order raising more questions than answers. Why would Lady Evelyn tie her niece's inheritance to abandoning a secret society? And who was the masked intruder, leaving behind the cufflink so deliberately? As they prepared to leave, Poirot paused by the fireplace, his fingers brushing the cold ashes. He knelt, sifting through them, and retrieved a tiny scrap of paper, its edges charred. The fragment bore a single word in Evelyn's elegant script. Veil. Poirot held it up to the light, his expression grave. The veil hides the truth, she wrote. And now, even in ashes, it speaks. We are close, Hastings, but the truth remains cloaked. They left the mansion as dawn broke, the sky streaked with pink and gold. Hastings drove their hired car back to London, his mind racing with theories, while Poirot sat in silence, his eyes half closed, his little gray cells at work. The cufflink rested in his pocket, a tangible clue in a case growing ever more tangled. Back at Poirot's flat, they reviewed the night's findings over a pot of strong coffee. Hastings spread the draft will on the table, frowning. This order. Business, it's all so murky. Do you think Clara's telling the truth about protecting her inheritance? Poirot sipped his coffee, his eyes distant. Truth, Hastings, is a slippery thing. Mademoiselle Clara speaks part of it, but not all. The will suggests Lady Evelyn feared the order's influence over her niece, and the intruder why. Leave. The cufflink. To taunt us, to frame another, or to distract. Hastings leaned back, exasperated. It's like chasing ghosts. Poirot. First the locked room, then the cryptic note, now this cufflink. And that jasmine scent, it's everywhere. Poirot chuckled softly. Not everywhere, mon ami, but where it matters. The jasmine is a signature, perhaps unintentional. We must learn who else carries it. Madame Volkov, certainly. But others, the servants, perhaps. Or even our elusive Dr. Mortimer. Hastings groaned. You don't think Mortimer's the intruder, do you? He's got an alibi for the murder night Jap. Confirmed he was at that lecture. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Alibis, Hastings, are like mirrors. They reflect what we wish to see, but they can be tilted to deceive. We shall verify Dr. Mortimer's movements, and we shall speak again with Madame Volkov, the jasmine, the cufflink, the will. They are threads in a tapestry. We must weave them together. The next morning, Poirot sent a telegram to Inspector Japp, requesting a list of all guests and servants present at the soiree. with a particular note to check for jasmine-scented perfumes or toiletries. He also asked Hastings to visit a chemist friend to analyze the cufflink for any residue fingerprints, perhaps, or traces of the wearer's scent. While Hastings was away, Poirot sat at his desk, sketching a diagram of the mansion's layout. He marked the study, the servants' entrance, and the garden path where the intruder had fled. His pencil lingered over the window where the cufflink was found, a small circle drawn around it. The intruder entered and left through the garden. He murmured, "But why the study? What did they seek that Clara did not already find?" Hastings returned with disappointing news. The cufflink was clean, no fingerprints or residue. The chemist said it's pure silver, though, and custom made. Not something you'd find in a shop. Whoever dropped it had money. Poirot nodded, unsurprised. Money and secrets, Hastings. The Order of the Crimson Veil is not a poor man's club. We must learn more of its members. Clara spoke of her aunt's closeness to Madame Volkov. Perhaps the Russian holds the key. They arranged to meet Madame Volkov that afternoon at her modest flat in Mayfair. The Russian emigre greeted them with cool politeness, her dark eyes wary. She wore a simple black dress, but the scent of jasmine was unmistakable, wafting from a small vial on her dressing table. Madame Volkov, Poirot began, seating himself in her sparsely furnished parlor. You were close to Lady Evelyn. She trusted you, yet you did not mention your involvement with the Order of the Crimson Veil. Irina's lips tightened. It was not relevant. The order is a private matter. Evelyn and I shared an interest in antiquities. Nothing more. Poirot leaned forward, his voice soft but insistent. And yet, madam, I find your scent jasmine papers in her study, and a cufflink of the order in the garden where an intruder fled. You will forgive me if I find this coincidental. Irina's composure faltered, her hands twisting in her lap. I know nothing of an intruder. As for the jasmine, it is a common scent. Evelyn wore it too, sometimes. You cannot accuse me. Based on a perfume. Poirot smiled faintly. Accuse? None, madam. I merely observe. But tell me, what did Lady Evelyn fear? Clara speaks of a hidden will, and we find references to the order. Did Evelyn wish to leave it? Irina hesitated, then spoke softly. Evelyn was troubled. She believed the veil was dangerous, not because of a curse, but because of what it represented. The order has enemies those who covet its relics. She spoke of changing her will, yes, to protect Clara. But I know nothing of its details. Poirot's eyes narrowed, and the cufflink, a symbol of the order, left behind by someone who entered the mansion last night. Who might that be? Irina shook her head. I don't know. The order is secretive, even among its members. Evelyn kept much from me. If someone was searching her study, perhaps they sought the veil itself. It is priceless to those who believe in its power. As they left Irina's flat, Hastings was skeptical. She's hiding something, Poirot. The jasmine scent is too much of a coincidence, and her story about the order's enemies sounds like she's trying to throw us off. Poirot nodded, deep in thought. Perhaps, Hastings. But her fear was genuine. The order is a web, and we have only touched its edges. We must return to the mansion, to the garden. The cufflink was left for a reason. We must find where it leads. That evening, they revisited the Carlisle estate, this time focusing on the garden path. The grass was trampled where the intruder had fled, leading to a low stone wall at the property's edge. Beyond it, a narrow lane ran alongside the estate, used by delivery carts and servants. Poirot examined the wall, his gloved fingers tracing its surface. Here, Hastings scratches, fresh ones. Our intruder climbed over, perhaps in haste. Hastings peered over the wall, spotting a faint glint in the dirt below. He climbed over, retrieving a small metal key, its head engraved with the same veil symbol as the cufflink. Another clue. Poirot. This must unlock something in the mansion. Poirot took the key, turning it over in his hand. But what? A safe, perhaps. or a hidden door. Lady Evelyn was a woman of secrets, and her killer knows them too. They return to the mansion, searching the study once more. Behind a heavy tapestry, Poirot found a small keyhole in the wall, barely visible. The key fit perfectly, revealing a hidden compartment containing a single item, a velvet pouch with a lock of hair. Auburn, like Clara's and a note in Evelyn's hand. "Forgive me. See, the veil must not claim you." Poirot's face was grim. The veil, always the veil. It is no mere artifact, Hastings. It is the heart of this mystery. Lady Evelyn feared for Clara. But why? And who else seeks its power? The night ended with more questions than answers. The cufflink, the key, the jasmine scent, they were pieces of a puzzle Poirot was determined to solve. As they drove back to London, the mansion fading into the darkness, Hastings couldn't shake the feeling that the killer was watching, waiting for their next move. The following days saw Poirot in a frenzy of activity, cross-referencing guest lists, interviewing servants, and studying the order's history. The jasmine scent became his obsession, leading him to question every woman at the soiree who might have worn it. A maid confirmed that Lady Evelyn had recently purchased a vial of jasmine perfume, but it was missing from her rooms. Had Clara taken it, or Volkov, or someone else entirely? The cufflink and key pointed to the order, but their purpose remained elusive. Poirot visited a jeweler, who confirmed the cufflink's custom design, likely commissioned by a wealthy patron. The key, too, was unique, its engraving suggesting a connection to a specific artifact, perhaps the veil itself. As the investigation deepened, Poirot's suspicions grew. Clara's desperation for the will, Irina's secrecy, and the order's shadowy rituals all pointed to a conspiracy larger than a single murder. The intruder's presence suggested someone else was after the same secrets, someone who knew the mansion's hidden places. One evening, as Poirot and Hastings reviewed their notes, a telegram arrived from Jap. A servant had seen Reginald Carlyle in the garden the night of the murder, carrying a small bundle. Could he be the intruder, or was he working with someone else? Poirot set the telegram down, his eyes gleaming. The threads tightened. Hastings, Reginald, Clara, Volkov, they are all bound to the veil. Tomorrow, we confront Lord Carlyle. The truth, it is near. The chapter closed with Poirot staring into the fire, the cufflink and key on the table before him, their silver surfaces reflecting the flickering flames. The jasmine scent lingered in his mind, a clue that would not let go. The midnight intruder had left a trail, and Hercule Poirot was determined to follow it to the end. Chapter 5. The Russian secret. Morning after the midnight intruder's escape, the air in the Carlyle mansion hung heavy with suspicion, as though the very walls whispered secrets they dared not speak aloud. Hercule Poirot, impeccably dressed in his pinstripe suit, sat in the drawing room, his small, precise hands folded over the silver head of his cane. His eyes, sharp as a falcon's, scanned the room, taking in every detail: the ornate chandelier casting fractured light, the velvet drapes drawn to mute the gray London sky, and the faint scent of jasmine that lingered, elusive yet unmistakable. Captain Hastings, ever the loyal companion, stood by the fireplace, his brow furrowed as he recounted the previous night's events to Inspector Japp, who paced with the restless energy of a bloodhound. Clara Beaumont sneaking about, a masked figure, and that blasted cufflink. Japp muttered, rubbing his temples. This case is a tangle. Poirot, what's your take on it? Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile, his mustache twitching. Mon ami, a tangle is merely a puzzle waiting for the right hand to unravel it. The cufflink, the jasmine, the will, these are threads, and we shall follow them to the truth. But first, we must speak with Madame Volkov. Her scent, it is too persistent to be a coincidence. Hastings glanced up, puzzled. You think she's the intruder, but why would she risk coming back? Why, indeed, Poirot replied, his voice soft but laced with intent. That is what we shall discover. Come, Hastings, Let us pay a visit to the Russian émigré. Her secrets, I suspect, are as intricate as the patterns on that crimson veil. The trio arrived at Madame Irina Volkov's lodgings in a quiet corner of Mayfair, a modest yet elegant townhouse that belied her enigmatic reputation. The door was answered by a stern-faced maid who ushered them into a parlor, adorned with exotic artifacts, a Russian samovar, a Persian rug, and a lacquered box etched with Cyrillic script. Madame Volkov entered moments later, her presence commanding. Despite her petite frame, her dark hair was swept into a chignon, and her eyes, a piercing green, seemed to weigh Poirot's every movement. She wore a silk dress the color of midnight, and the faint scent of jasmine trailed her like a shadow. "Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings." "Inspector Japp," she greeted, her voice carrying a faint Slavic cadence. "To what do I owe this intrusion?" Poirot inclined his head, his tone polite but probing. "Madam, we are here to discuss the night of Lady Evelyn's murder, and, perhaps, the matter of a certain perfumed jasmine, n'est-ce pas? That seems to follow you as closely as your past." Volkov's eyes narrowed, but she gestured for them to sit. "You are direct, Monsieur Poirot. Very well. Ask your questions." Japp, never one for subtlety, leaned forward. "Were you in Lady Evelyn's study last night, Madame Volkov?" "We caught someone sneaking about, and they left behind a whiff of your perfume." Volkov's lips tightened, but her composure held. "I was at home, Inspector. My maid can confirm it. As for jasmine, it is a common scent. You would do better to question Clara Beaumont, who, I hear, was also in the study last night." Poirot's fingers tapped lightly on his cane. "A convenient alibi, madam. But let us speak of Lady Evelyn. You were close. Yes, confidence, perhaps, within the Order of the Crimson Veil." For the first time, Volkov's facade cracked, her hand pausing as she reached for a teacup. "The Order, you know of it, Mace." "We," Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. "A society dedicated to protecting ancient relics. Or so it claims. Lady Evelyn was a member, and you, I believe, were more than a mere acquaintance. What was your role, madam, and what did Evelyn plan to do with her will?" Volkov set the teacup down with a clink, her expression guarded. "Evelyn and I shared a passion for history, for the sacred artifacts of the past. The Order was our bond, a small group, sworn to preserve what others would exploit. As for her will, she spoke of changing it. Yes, she wished to protect her collection, to ensure it went to someone who valued it, not her wastrel brother, Reginald. And that someone was not you?" Poirot pressed, his voice deceptively mild. Volkov's gaze hardened. "I had no need for her wealth. My own resources are sufficient, but Evelyn feared betrayal. She spoke of a shadowed hand, a phrase from the Order's lore. She believed someone within our circle was working against her." Hastings, unable to resist, interjected, "A shadowed hand. That sounds like a code for the killer." Poirot raised a hand, silencing him. "Patience, Hastings, madam. This shadowed hand. Did Evelyn name this betrayer?" Volkov hesitated, her fingers tracing the edge of the lacquer box. "No, but she was afraid. The crimson veil. It was more than a relic to her. She believed it held power, a connection to the priestess who wore it. She thought it could reveal truths or hide them." Japp snorted. "Sounds like superstitious nonsense. We're dealing with a murder, not a ghost story." "Perhaps," Poirot said, his eyes never leaving Volkov. "But the veil was draped over Lady Evelyn's face, and her throat was cut with a ceremonial dagger. The killer wished to evoke the curse. Tell me, madam, did you ever handle the veil?" Volkov's face paled, but she met his gaze. "Never. I respected its sanctity. Evelyn alone kept it, locked in her study." Poirot nodded, as if satisfied, though his mind was already turning. "One final question, madam. A ledger in Evelyn's room recorded payments to someone with the initial V. Would you know anything of this?" Volkov's composure faltered, her breath catching. Payments? I received small sums from Evelyn. Yes, for travel, to acquire relics for the order. Nothing more. Poirot rose, adjusting his hat. Merci, madam. You have been most illuminating. We shall speak again. As they left the townhouse, Japp muttered, she's hiding something, Poirot. Those payments smells like blackmail to me. Perhaps, Poirot replied, his eyes distant. But the truth, mon ami, is like the veil itself. It hides in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to be lifted. Back at the Carlyle mansion, Poirot requested access to Evelyn's study once more, determined to uncover further clues. The room was as they had left it, bookshelves lined with tomes on Egyptology, a mahogany desk cluttered with papers, and the faint scent of jasmine that seemed to cling to the air. Poirot's attention fixed on a small writing desk in the corner, where a locked drawer had gone unnoticed during their initial search. Hastings, assist me, Poirot said, producing a small set of lockpicks from his pocket, a tool that never failed to surprise his companion. You carry those around? Hastings asked, incredulous. A detective must be prepared for all eventualities, Poirot replied, deftly working the lock. The drawer opened to reveal a bundle of letters tied with a crimson ribbon, alongside a second note in Evelyn's elegant script, beware the shadowed hand. Poirot's eyes gleamed as he read the note aloud. This phrase again. It is no mere metaphor. Hastings, it is a warning and a clue. The letters, written in French, detailed Evelyn's correspondence with a contact in Cairo, discussing the veil's origins and its supposed curse. One letter, dated a month before her death, mentioned a trusted friend who had betrayed her trust, delivering the veil to the wrong hands. The signature was illegible, but the initial V appeared in the margins. Volkov again, Japp said, peering over Poirot's shoulder. She's up to her neck in this. Not so fast. Mon ami, Poirot cautioned. The V could belong to another. We must consider all possibilities. Hastings, flipping through the letters, paused at one with a smudge postmark. This one mentions a poison, a rare extract from an Egyptian plant used in ancient rituals. Could that be how Evelyn was killed? Poirot's mustache twitched. An excellent observation. Hastings, the slit throat was dramatic, meant to distract from the true cause of death. We must have the coroner re-examine the body for traces of poison. Japp nodded, scribbling in his notebook. I'll get on it. But if Volkov's smuggling relics, maybe she's smuggling poisons too. Her past as a smuggler, Scotland Yard's got a file on her, you know. She slipped through our fingers in 22. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Then let us pay a visit to Scotland Yard, Inspector. Madame Volkov's past may hold the key to her present at Scotland Yard. Japp retrieved a dusty file on Irina Volkov, detailing her activities in the early 1920s. Born in St. Petersburg, she had fled Russia during the Revolution, arriving in London with a reputation for dealing in rare artifacts. Suspected of smuggling antiquities through Istanbul, she had evaded prosecution due to lack of evidence. The file included a photograph of a younger Volkov standing beside a man in a veiled robe, the symbol of the Order of the Crimson Veil embroidered on his sleeve. This confirms it, Japp said, slapping the file shut. She's neck deep in this order business. And if she's smuggling poisons, non, Poirot interrupted, his finger raised. We must not leap to conclusions. The poison, the veil, the order, these are pieces of the puzzle. But the picture is not yet clear. We must return to the mansion and examine the scene of the crime once more. The trio returned to the Carlyle mansion as dusk fell, the sky bruised with clouds. In Evelyn's study, Poirot knelt beside the desk, his magnifying glass in hand. He inspected the floorboards, the edges of the rug, and the lock on the window, which had been overlooked in the initial investigation. A faint scratch on the sill caught his eye, a mark that suggested the window had been forced open, then carefully closed. Chapter 6. The archaeologist's alibis. The morning sun filtered through the heavy drapes of the Carlisle mansion, casting long shadows across the parquet floor of the drawing room where Hercule Poirot sat, his hands folded neatly over his waistcoat. Captain Hastings, ever the faithful companion, stood by the window, peering out at the manicured gardens as if they might yield some clue to the mystery of Lady Evelyn Carlisle's death. The air was thick with the scent of polished wood and the faint, lingering trace of jasmine that seemed to haunt every corner of this case. Inspector Japp, pacing near the fireplace, muttered under his breath about the complexities of locked room murders and cursed veils. Poirot's eyes, sharp and unyielding, darted between his notes and the faces of the servants who had been summoned to recount their movements on the night of the murder. The household staff, a nervous lot, stood in a line, their starched uniforms betraying none of the unease that flickered in their eyes. Poirot had insisted on questioning them again, certain that some overlooked detail might illuminate the path to the truth. Mon ami, Poirot said, turning to Hastings, you will recall that Dr. Felix Mortimer claims he was at a lecture at the Royal Archaeological Society during the time of Lady Evelyn's demise. A most convenient alibi, n'est-ce pas? Yet I, Hercule Poirot, am not one to accept convenience without scrutiny. Hastings nodded, though his expression suggested he was still piecing together the web of motives and secrets that entangled the suspects. You think Mortimer's lying, then? He seemed awfully sure of himself when we spoke to him yesterday. Seemed, Hastings, is the operative word, Poirot replied, his voice low but precise. The little gray cells, they whisper to me that something is amiss. A lecture, you say? We shall see if this lecture holds water. Japp snorted, pausing his pacing to adjust his tie. I've got men checking his story, Poirot, but I'll wager you've already got some hunch you're not sharing. Out with it. Man, what's on your mind? Poirot smiled faintly, his mustache twitching. Patience, Inspector, the mind of Poirot works like a fine clock, each gear turning in its proper time. First, we must confirm the alibi of Dr. Mortimer. Then, we shall see what other truths emerge from the shadows. The trio set out for the Royal Archaeological Society, a grand building in Bloomsbury with towering columns and an air of scholarly gravitas. The streets of London bustled with the usual chaos, horse-drawn cabs jostling alongside motor cars, vendors shouting their wares, and the distant clang of a tram. Hastings, ever susceptible to the city's energy, seemed momentarily distracted. But Poirot's focus remained unshakable. Inside the Society's lecture hall, they were greeted by Mr. Clarence Withers, a bespectacled clerk with a penchant for fussing over ledgers. Poirot, with his characteristic charm, inquired about the lecture scheduled on the night of Lady Evelyn's murder. Oh, yes, the lecture on Mesopotamian pottery, Withers said, adjusting his glasses. It was to be delivered by Professor Langston, but I'm afraid it was cancelled at the last moment. The professor took ill, you see. We sent out notices to all members, though I dare say some were disappointed. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Cancelled, you say? And this was known to all who planned to attend? Well, yes, Withers replied, blinking rapidly. We posted a notice on the board and sent telegrams to our regular attendees. Dr. Mortimer, you say? I can check if he was informed. Do so, if you please, Poirot said, his tone polite but firm. As Withers scurried off to consult his records, Japp leaned in. If the lecture was cancelled, Mortimer's alibi is as shaky as a house of cards. Why lie about it unless he's hiding something? Precisement, Poirot murmured. But what is he hiding? That is the question. Withers returned, clutching a ledger. Dr. Mortimer was indeed notified. Here's the telegram receipt, signed by his housekeeper. He would have known the lecture was cancelled by noon. That day, Japp's face lit up with grim satisfaction. Got him. Let's haul him in and see what he says now. But Poirot raised a hand. Not yet, mon ami. To confront without understanding is to scatter the pieces of the puzzle. We must learn more. Let us visit Dr. Mortimer's office at the British Museum. Perhaps there we shall find what he does not wish us to see. The British Museum, a labyrinth of artifacts and dusty corridors, was a fitting backdrop for a man like Dr. Felix Mortimer. His office, tucked away in a corner of the Egyptology wing, was cluttered with books, maps, and fragments of pottery. The man himself was there, hunched over a desk strewn with papers, his face pale and drawn. He looked up as Poirot, Hastings, and Japp entered, his eyes narrowing. "Gentlemen," Mortimer said, rising with a forced smile. "To what do I owe this visit?" Poirot wasted no time. "Dr. Mortimer, you have told us you were at a lecture on the night Lady Evelyn Carlisle was murdered, yet I have learned this lecture was cancelled. Perhaps you would care to explain." Mortimer's smile faltered, and for a moment his composure slipped. "Cancelled. I must have been mistaken. I was at the society, certainly, but perhaps I was in the library instead. Yes, that's it, I was researching." Japp crossed his arms, unimpressed. "Researching. Convenient, that. Care to tell us what you were researching? Or shall we assume it was how to slit a throat and make it look like a curse?" Mortimer's face reddened. "That's outrageous. I had nothing to do with Evelyn's death," we argued. "Yes, but it was professional. She questioned my authentication of the Crimson Veil, claimed it might be a forgery. I was furious she was undermining my reputation." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And this argument, it took place when, precisement, the afternoon of the soirée," Mortimer admitted, running a hand through his thinning hair. "But I left the mansion by 6 o'clock. I swear it." "Yet you were not at the lecture," Poirot pressed. "And you were not at home, for your housekeeper confirms you were out until late. Where were you?" "Dr. Mortimer." Mortimer hesitated, his gaze darting to a drawer in his desk. I was at a pub, drowning my frustrations. The Red Lion, near Covent Garden. Ask the barkeep, he'll remember me." Japp scribbled a note. "We'll check that, don't you worry. But I'm starting to think you're not telling us the whole truth." Mortimer, Poirot, meanwhile, had wandered to the desk, his keen eyes scanning its contents. A small brass key, half hidden beneath a stack of papers, caught his attention. With a deft movement, he palmed it, unnoticed by Mortimer or Japp. "We shall verify your story, Doctor," Poirot said smoothly. "But for now, I suggest you remain. In London, it would be most inconvenient if you were to leave." As they left the museum, Hastings couldn't contain his curiosity. "Poirot, what was that about the key? I saw you take it." Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile. "A trifle, perhaps, but one never knows. This key, it may unlock more than a drawer. Come, let us return to the mansion. There are yet secrets to uncover." Back at the Carlisle mansion, the atmosphere was tense. The servants had been dismissed, and the remaining suspects Lord Reginald Carlisle, Clara Beaumont, and Madame Irina Volkov were confined to their rooms under Japp's orders. Poirot, however, was not content to sit idly. He led Hastings to Evelyn's study, where the Crimson Veil still lay under police guard, its vibrant hue a stark contrast to the somber mood. Using the key he had taken, Poirot approached a small cabinet in the corner of the study, one that had been overlooked in earlier searches. The key fit perfectly, and the cabinet opened to reveal a hidden compartment. Inside was a glass vial, no larger than a thimble, containing a clear liquid. A label, written in Evelyn's precise hand, read, "Extract of Aconitum." Hastings gasped. "Aconite? That's a poison, isn't it?" "Indeed," Poirot said, his voice grave. "One of the deadliest. A few drops, and the heart ceases to beat. This, I believe, is the weapon used to end Lady Evelyn's life." Japp, summoned to the study, examined the vial with a grim expression. "This is it, then. The same poison the coroner found in her system. But how did it get here? And who administered it?" Poirot's eyes gleamed with the thrill of the chase. "That, Inspector, is what we must discover." The vial was hidden. Yes, but not so well that it could not be found by one who knew where to look. Someone wished it to be discovered, perhaps to cast suspicion elsewhere. As Japp sent the vial for analysis, Hastings pulled Poirot aside. "There's something else, Poirot. I didn't want to mention it in front of Japp, but I've been asking around the servants. One of the maids, Elsie, saw something odd the night of the murder. She said she caught a glimpse of Dr. Mortimer and Clara Beaumont in the garden, whispering together. They seemed close." Poirot's eyebrows rose. "Close, you say? Most interesting. An affair, perhaps, or conspiracy. We must speak to this Elsie at once." Elsie, a timid girl with wide eyes, was brought to the drawing room. Under Poirot's gentle but insistent questioning, she recounted her story. "I didn't mean to eavesdrop, sir, but I saw them, Dr. Mortimer and Miss Clara, out by the rose arbor. It was just before the soiree began. They were talking low, and he had his hand on her arm. I couldn't hear much, but I heard her say something about the will and making sure it's done." Poirot exchanged a glance with Hastings. "Merci, Elsie. You have been most helpful." As the maid scurried off, Japp rejoined them, his face a mixture of frustration and excitement. "The Red Lion barkeep confirms Mortimer was there, but only from 9 o'clock onward. That leaves a gap of several hours unaccounted for. He could have been anywhere, including here, at the mansion." Poirot nodded, his mind racing. "And yet, the poison suggests premeditation. The locked room, the ceremonial dagger, the crimson veil, all these point to a killer who wished to create a spectacle, to distract from the true method of murder. But why? And how does this connect to Mademoiselle Clara?" The day wore on, with Poirot and Hastings retracing their steps through the mansion, examining every detail of the crime scene. The study, with its heavy oak door and single window, remained a puzzle. The lock was intact, the window bolted from the inside. No one could have entered or left without a key unless, as Poirot suspected, there was another way. In the late afternoon, Poirot paused by a bookcase in the study, his fingers tracing the spines of ancient tomes. "Hastings," he said suddenly, "do you recall the scent of jasmine? It is everywhere in this case, on Madame Volkov, in the ashes, and now, I suspect, here." He pressed a panel in the bookcase, and with a soft click, it swung open to reveal a narrow passage. Hastings gasped. "A secret passage? Poirot, you've done it again." "Calm yourself, mon ami," Poirot said, though his eyes sparkled with satisfaction. "This passage, it leads to the garden, I presume. A perfect way for our killer to enter and exit unseen. But we must confirm its destination. The passage, damp and narrow, led to a hidden door behind the rose arbor, the very spot where Elsie had seen Mortimer and Clara." Poirot examined the ground, noting fresh footprints in the soft earth. "Cassettes," he murmured, "one small, likely a woman's, the other, larger, perhaps Dr. Mortimer's." Japp, who had followed them, was practically vibrating with excitement. "This is it, Poirot. The passage explains the locked room, but we still need to pin down who used it." Poirot nodded, his expression thoughtful. "We shall confront Dr. Mortimer once more. But first, let us consider Mademoiselle Clara. Her presence in the garden with Mortimer, her interest in the will. It is all too convenient. We must tread carefully, for the truth is close, yet it remains veiled." That evening, they returned to Mortimer's office, only to find it empty. A quick search revealed a crumpled letter in the wastebin, written in Clara's hand. "Felix, we must act quickly. The will is hidden, but I know where. Meet me tonight." The letter was dated the day of the murder. Japp's eyes widened. An affair and a plot. This is getting Jewisher by the minute. Poirot, however, was more reserved. An affair, perhaps. A plot, certainly. But we must not leap to conclusions. The letter suggests Clara knew of the will's location, yet she was searching for it the night we caught her. Why? And why meet Mortimer in secret? They tracked Mortimer to his lodgings, a modest flat near Russell Square. He opened the door, looking haggard, his tie askew. "What now?" he demanded. "I've told you everything." "Not quite," Poirot said, holding up the letter. "This suggests you and Mademoiselle Clara were intimate, shall we say, and plotting something regarding Lady Evelyn's will. Care to explain?" Mortimer's shoulders slumped. "It's not what you think. Yes, Clara and we've been close. But it wasn't about murder. She wanted my help to find the will, to ensure her inheritance. Evelyn was going to cut her out. You see, she told me so during our argument. Clara was desperate, and the poison," Japp interjected. "We found aconite in your office." Mortimer paled. That was for research. I study ancient toxins, their uses in rituals. I swear, I didn't use it on Evelyn." Poirot's eyes bore into him. "And the passage in the mansion? Did you know of it?" Mortimer shook his head vehemently. "No, I've never seen it. I was at the Red Lion by 9, as I said. Check with the barkeep again, if you must." Japp, ever thorough, had already sent a constable to verify the timeline. The report came back quickly. Mortimer was indeed at the pub from 9 until nearly midnight, far from the mansion when the murder occurred, estimated between 7 and 8 o'clock based on the coroner's findings. Poirot paced the small room, his mind a whirlwind of facts and possibilities. "Dr. Mortimer, you are cleared for now. Your alibi holds, but your secrets do not. The affair with Mademoiselle Clara, the argument with Lady Evelyn, the vial of poison, these paint a picture most unflattering. But the little gray cells. Tell me you are not the killer, not this time." As they left Mortimer's flat, Hastings was visibly frustrated. "Poirot, we're no closer to the truth. Mortimer's alibi holds, but he's hiding something. And Clara, what's her game? Is she in love with him, or using him?" Poirot smiled enigmatically. "Both, perhaps, or neither. The heart, Hastings, is as much a mystery as the mind. But we have learned much today. The poison, the passage, the letter, these are pieces of the puzzle. And the scent of jasmine, it lingers still. We must return to the mansion, for there, I believe, the final piece awaits." Back at the mansion, the night was quiet, the air heavy with anticipation. Poirot stood in the study, the crimson veil before him, its folds catching the lamplight. "The veil hides the truth," he murmured, echoing the note found in Evelyn's hand. "But the truth, it is not in the veil itself. It is in the hands that placed it there." He turned to Hastings and Japp, his voice steady. "Tomorrow, we shall gather the suspects once more. The poison, the passage, the will, they all point to one who has woven a web of deceit. But fear not, Mzamas. Hercule Poirot shall unravel it, thread by thread." The chapter closed with the mansion shrouded in darkness, the veil lying still, a silent witness to the secrets it had yet to reveal. The truth was near, but for now, it remained just out of reach, hidden in the shadows of the Carlisle estate. Chapter 7. The missing will. Morning sun filtered through the heavy drapes of the Carlisle mansion, casting long, dappled shadows across the oak-paneled drawing room. Hercule Poirot sat in a high-backed chair, his small, immaculate figure, stark contrast to the opulent surroundings. His hands, neatly folded, rested on his lap, and his eyes, sharp as ever, surveyed the room with a quiet intensity. Captain Hastings stood by the window, fidgeting with his tie, his face a mixture of curiosity and impatience. Inspector Japp, ever the practical man, paced near the fireplace, his notebook open, scribbling furiously. "Poirot, this case is a tangle," Japp said, pausing to rub his temples. "We've got motives piling up like in pay Bill's inheritance. Jealousy, some blasted secret society. And now this talk of a missing will. It's enough to drive a man to drink." Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile. "Patience, my dear Japp, the threads of this mystery, they are many, but they will weave together in time. The will, I think, is the key to unraveling the knot. We must find it. Hastings turned from the window, his brow furrowed. But, Poirot, if there is a will, why hasn't it turned up? The study has been searched top to bottom, and we've questioned everyone who was at the soiree. Surely someone would have seen something. Poirot raised a finger, his eyes gleaming. Not necessarily. Mon ami, the absence of the will is itself a clue. If it has been hidden or destroyed, it tells us someone fears its contents. And that, Hastings, is where we begin today. The trio had returned to the Carlisle mansion with a singular purpose: to locate the rumored will of Lady Evelyn Carlisle, the woman whose murder had set this intricate puzzle in motion. Her death, with the crimson veil draped over her face and a ceremonial dagger in her throat, had been no accident. Poirot was certain. The cryptic note in her hand, "The veil hides the truth," pointed to a deeper conspiracy, one tied to the mysterious Order of the Crimson Veil and the motives of those closest to her. Japp snapped his notebook shut. Right, then, I've got the constables searching the upper floors, but I'll wager the study's still our best bet. That's where she was killed, after all. Precisement, Poirot agreed, rising from his chair with a graceful motion. The study is the heart of this mystery. Let us go there at once. The study was as they had left it, a grand, somber room lined with bookshelves, its heavy mahogany desk dominating the center. The air still carried a faint metallic tang, a grim reminder of the blood that had been cleaned from the floor. The crimson veil, now in police custody, had left an eerie void in the room, its absence almost as unsettling as its presence had been. Poirot's eyes swept over the space, lingering on the smallest details: the alignment of the books, the angle of the desk lamp, the faint scuff on the rug near the window. "Hastings," Poirot said, his voice low, "you will assist me in examining the desk once more. Japp, I suggest you speak with the servants again. One of them may have seen something they did not think important at the time." Japp nodded, though his expression betrayed his skepticism. "Servants, I'll have a word with that butler, Jenkins. He's been hovering about like a ghost, always watching." As Japp left, Hastings approached the desk, his hands hovering uncertainly. "What exactly are we looking for, Poirot? We've already gone through every drawer." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Not every drawer, mon ami, conceals its secrets so easily. A will is a document of power, and power is often hidden in plain sight or in places one does not think to look." He knelt beside the desk, his fingers tracing the edges of the lower panels. Hastings watched, fascinated, as Poirot's meticulous nature took over. The detective pressed gently on a carved recette, and with a soft click, a hidden compartment sprang open, revealing a narrow slot no wider than a letter. "Good heavens!" Hastings exclaimed, leaning closer. "How did you know?" Poirot's eyes twinkled. "The desk. It is to find a piece to be merely functional. Such craftsmanship often hides surprises. Now, let us see." He reached into the slot and withdrew a folded piece of parchment, yellowed at the edges but intact. The wax seal bore the Carlisle crest, unbroken. Poirot's expression grew grave as he carefully unfolded the document. "It is the will," he said softly. "The last testament of Lady Evelyn Carlisle." Hastings crowded beside him, reading over his shoulder. The document was brief but clear. Lady Evelyn bequeathed her entire estate to her niece, Clara Beaumont, with a single condition: that Clara sever all ties with the Order of the Crimson Veil. Should Clara fail to comply, the estate would pass to a charitable trust for the preservation of Egyptian antiquities. "This changes everything," Hastings said, his voice hushed. "Clara stands to gain a fortune, but only if she abandons that strange society." "Do you think she knew?" Poirot's eyes narrowed. "That, mon ami, is the question. If Clara knew of this condition, it gives her a motive most compelling. But there is another matter: where has this will been, and why was it hidden?" Before Hastings could respond, Japp burst into the room, his face flushed. "Poirot, you'll want to hear this. Jenkins, the butler, just let slip something curious. He says he saw Lord Reginald in the library the night of the murder, burning papers in the fireplace. Claims he didn't think much of it at the time, thought it was just old bills. But now he's not so sure. Poirot's head snapped up. Burning papers, you say? This is most interesting. Come, we must examine this. Fireplace at once. The library, adjacent to the study, was a cavernous room filled with leather-bound tomes and the faint scent of aged paper. The fireplace, a massive stone affair, stood cold, its grate filled with a pile of ash. Poirot knelt before it, his gloved hands sifting through the debris with the precision of a surgeon. Hastings and Japp watched in silence, the tension in the room palpable. After a moment, Poirot held up a small fragment of paper. Its edges charred, but its contents partially legible. The faint scent of jasmine clung to it, a detail that made Poirot's eyes gleam. Jasmine, he murmured, the same scent we detected in the study and on Madame Volkov. This is no coincidence. Hastings frowned. But what does it mean? Poirot, was Volkov burning papers too? Poirot shook his head. Non, mon ami. The scent suggests a connection, but not necessarily that Madame Volkov was here. The paper, it is scented, perhaps deliberately, to mislead us. Let us see what it says. He held the fragment to the light. The words were faint, but readable. Debts discharged. Reginald, the rest was lost to the flames. Japp's eyes widened. Reginald's gambling debts. He's been dodging creditors for months. If he burned the will to keep Clara from inheriting, that'd explain a lot. Poirot's expression remained inscrutable. Perhaps, Japp, but we must not leap to conclusions. The will we found was hidden, not burned. This paper may be something else entirely, a distraction or a clue to another motive. The detective rose, brushing ash from his gloves. We must confront Lord Reginald. His actions that night are most suspicious. Lord Reginald Carlyle was found in the billiard room, a glass of brandy in hand, his face pale and drawn. He was a tall man, with the aristocratic bearing of his family, but his eyes betrayed a nervous energy. When Poirot entered, followed by Hastings and Japp, Reginald's hand tightened around his glass. "What's this about?" he demanded, his voice sharp. "Haven't I answered enough of your questions?" Poirot's smile was polite, but unyielding. "Monsieur, we have learned of your activities on the night of your sister's death. You were seen burning papers in the library. Perhaps you would care to explain?" Reginald's face flushed. "Burning papers? Nonsense. I was merely disposing of some old letters, personal matters, nothing to do with Evelyn." "Letters that smelled of jasmine?" Poirot asked, his voice soft but piercing. Reginald froze, his eyes darting to the side. "Jasmine? I don't know what you're talking about." Japp stepped forward, his tone gruff. "Come off it. Carlyle, Jenkins saw you at the fireplace, and we've got the ashes to prove it. If you burn the will, you'd better start talking." Reginald slammed his glass down, spilling brandy across the table. "I didn't burn any will. Yes, I was in the library, but I was burning Iowa's debts. I'd settled. I didn't want them lying about for anyone to find. My sister's death has nothing to do with it." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And yet, monsieur, the will we have found names Clara as the sole heir, with a condition that would surely displease you. Did you know of its contents?" Reginald's jaw tightened. "I knew Evelyn was rewriting her will. She told me she was cutting me out, said I'd squandered enough of the family fortune. But I didn't kill her for it. I'm not a murderer." Hastings leaned toward Poirot, whispering, "Do you believe him, Poirot? He's got motive enough." Poirot's response was a faint nod. His words, "They ring with truth, but only partially. There is more," he does not say. "We must verify the will's authenticity and ensure no other documents were destroyed." The rest of the morning was spent in meticulous examination. Japp summoned a solicitor from London, a dour man named Mr. Grayson, who confirmed the will's authenticity. The document was genuine, signed by Lady Evelyn and witnessed by 2 servants, who were still in the household, yet Poirot's unease persisted. The jasmine-scented paper in the fireplace gnawed at him, a loose thread in the tapestry of the case. As the day wore on, Poirot requested a private audience with Jenkins, the butler. The man was elderly, his face lined with years of service, but his eyes were sharp and observant. In the quiet of the servants' quarters, Poirot questioned him, gently but firmly. "Monsieur Jenkins, you saw Lord Reginald burning papers. Did you notice anything else that night? A sound, a shadow, perhaps the scent of jasmine?" Jenkins hesitated, his hands twisting together. "Well, sir, I didn't think much of it at the time, but there was something odd. When I passed the library, I heard voices, Lord Reginald's, I'm sure, and another, a woman's, I think, but I couldn't make out the words. And yes, there was a scent like flowers, but I couldn't say for certain it was jasmine." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "A woman's voice. This is most illuminating. Did you see anyone else near the library?" Jenkins shook his head. "No, sir. The house was in an uproar after her ladyship was found. I was too busy to notice much else." Poirot thanked the butler and dismissed him, his mind already racing. A woman's voice, the scent of jasmine. The burned papers had all pointed to a conspiracy deeper than a simple inheritance dispute. Madame Volkov's name lingered in his thoughts, her connection to the Order of the Crimson Veil and her mysterious past making her a figure of intrigue. That afternoon, Poirot and Hastings returned to the study, determined to uncover any remaining secrets. The hidden compartment in the desk had yielded the will, but Poirot's instincts told him there was more to find. He examined the bookshelves, running his fingers along the spines, searching for irregularities. At last, he paused at a volume of Egyptian mythology, its cover slightly misaligned. With a gentle tug, he pulled the book forward, and a soft click echoed through the room. A section of the bookshelf swung inward, revealing a narrow alcove. Inside was a small iron safe, its lock gleaming in the dim light. "Hastings," Poirot called, his voice tinged with excitement. "Bring Jap at once. We have found something of great importance." When Jap arrived, panting from his sprint across the mansion, Poirot was already examining the safe. "It is locked, of course," he said, "but I suspect the key is not far. Hastings, check the desk once more, perhaps in the drawer where we found the will." Hastings obeyed, rifling through the desk until he found a small brass key tucked beneath a false bottom in a drawer. "Got it, Poirot." The key turned smoothly in the lock, and the safe door swung open. Inside was a single item, a leather-bound journal, its pages filled with Evelyn's precise handwriting. Poirot flipped through it, his eyes scanning the entries with growing intensity. "It is a record of the Order's activities," he said at last. "Meetings, rituals, and payments. Look here, another reference to V, and a note about a shadowed hand delivering justice to those who betray the Order." Jap whistled. "Sounds like Volkov again. But what's this about a shadowed hand? Some kind of enforcer?" "Precisement," Poirot said. "But I begin to suspect the shadowed hand is not a person, but a symbol, a code for the killer's method. The poison used on Lady Evelyn, it is rare, and its source may lie within the Order itself." The journal also contained a sketch of the Crimson Veil, with annotations about its supposed powers. Evelyn had written of her doubts, questioning the veil's authenticity and fearing the consequences of her involvement with the Order. One entry stood out. "I have betrayed their trust. The shadowed hand will come for me." Hastings shivered. It's as if she knew she was going to die. Poirot nodded. She knew too much. Mon ami. And someone ensured her silence. The discovery of the journal and the will shifted the investigations focus. Poirot spent the evening poring over the documents, cross-referencing names and dates, while Jap coordinated with his men to track down any additional witnesses. Hastings, ever eager to contribute, suggested revisiting Clara Beaumont, whose role as the sole heir made her a central figure in the case. Clara's been cagey from the start, Hastings said. If she knew about the will's condition, she might have had reason to act before Evelyn could enforce it. Poirot agreed, and the next morning, they summoned Clara to the drawing room. She arrived dressed in black, her face pale but composed, her eyes darting nervously as Poirot laid the will before her. Mademoiselle Beaumont, he began, his voice calm but firm, we have found your aunt's will. You are named as her heir, but with a condition that you leave the Order of the Crimson Veil. Were you aware of this? Clara's hands trembled, but she met Poirot's gaze. I'd suspected she might do something like that. Aunt Evelyn was always talking about the order, how it had consumed her life. She wanted me to be free of it, but I didn't think she'd go this far. And did you agree to her terms? Poirot asked, his eyes never leaving her face. Clara hesitated. I told her I'd consider it, but the order, it's not just a club, it's a way of life, a connection to something greater. I couldn't just walk away. Jap leaned forward, his voice sharp. And what about the money? A fortune like that's worth killing for, isn't it? Clara's eyes flashed. How dare you? I loved my aunt. I'd never harm her, no matter what was in her will. Poirot raised a hand, silencing Jap. Mademoiselle, your words are passionate, but passion can hide many things. Tell me, did you ever smell jasmine in your aunt's study, or hear of papers being burned? Clara frowned, clearly caught off guard. Jasmine? No, I don't think so. And I didn't know about any papers. What are you implying? Poirot did not answer directly. Instead, he turned to Jap. We must test the ashes from the fireplace. If they contain traces of the same paper used in the will, we will know whether Lord Reginald speaks the truth. The analysis of the ashes was conducted swiftly, with the help of a chemist from Scotland Yard. The results were conclusive. The burned paper was indeed scented with jasmine, but it was not the same stock as the will. Instead, it matched the type of stationery commonly used by Madame Volkov, a discovery that sent a ripple of excitement through the investigation. Volkov again. Jap muttered, she is like a shadow in this case. Always there, but never quite in focus. Poirot nodded. She is a woman of secrets, Jap, but secrets, they have a way of coming to light. The chapter closed with Poirot standing alone in the study. The journal opened before him. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, but the picture was still incomplete. The will's authenticity was confirmed, but the jasmine-scented paper, the burned documents, and the mysterious shadowed hand pointed to a deeper truth. As the sun set over the Carlisle mansion, Poirot's little gray cells worked tirelessly, determined to unveil the killer hiding behind the crimson veil. Chapter 8. The Order's ritual of night was heavy with mist as Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings made their way through the cobbled streets of London, their footsteps muffled by the damp air. The city seemed to hold its breath, as if aware of the secrets they were about to uncover. Poirot, dressed in a dark cloak that was uncharacteristically plain for his fastidious tastes, adjusted the veiled mask he wore to disguise meticulously. Crafted to infiltrate the Order of the Crimson Veil, Hastings, ever the loyal companion, followed close behind, his own mask slightly askew, betraying his discomfort with the clandestine operation. Are you certain this is wise, Poirot? Hastings whispered, his voice barely audible over the distant clatter of a passing carriage. If they discover you're not one of them, mon ami, Poirot interrupted, his tone calm, but firm. The little gray cells, they do not fail me. The Order hides the key to Lady Evelyn's murder, and tonight we shall unlock its secrets. They arrive at a nondescript building in a quiet corner of Mayfair. Its facade unremarkable save for a subtle crimson sigil etched above the door, symbol Poirot had seen in Evelyn's papers. The entrance was guarded by a cloaked figure who demanded a password. Poirot, with the confidence of a man who had memorized every detail, murmured, in Unravel, a phrase he had deciphered from the coded ledger. The guard nodded, and the heavy door creaked open. revealing a dimly lit staircase descending into shadow. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of incense jasmine, Poirot noted, his mind flashing to the faint perfume detected in Evelyn's study. The walls were draped in crimson velvet, and flickering candles cast eerie shadows across the room. A dozen figures, all masked and robed in crimson, stood in a circle around a low altar, upon which rested a replica of the crimson veil. Its fabric shimmered under the candlelight, as if alive with some ancient power. Poirot's sharp eyes scanned the room, noting the solemnity of the gathering, the hushed whispers, and the palpable tension. The ritual began with a low chant, the words unfamiliar but rhythmic, almost hypnotic. Poirot, standing at the edge of the circle, mimicked the other's posture, his hands clasped before him. Hastings, less adept at blending in, shifted nervously, earning a subtle nudge from Poirot to remain still. The chant grew louder, and a figure taller than the rest, with a commanding presence, stepped forward, raising their hands to silence the group, brothers and sisters of the Crimson Veil. The figure intoned, their voice distorted by the mask, "We gather to honor the priestess's legacy. The veil grants power to those who are worthy, but curses those who betray its sanctity." Poirot's mind raced. The voice was familiar, yet altered, perhaps by design. He studied the figure's movements, the way they gestured with authority, and filed the observation away for later. The chant resumed, now mentioning a shadowed hand, the same phrase from Evelyn's second note. Poirot's pulse quickened. This was no mere metaphor, but a code name, a clue to the killer's identity. As the ritual continued, Poirot noticed Clara Beaumont among the initiates. Her slight frame was unmistakable, even beneath the robe, and her hands trembled as she joined the chant. Her eyes, visible through the slits of her mask, were wide with a mix of awe and desperation. Poirot recalled her earlier claim of protecting her inheritance, but her presence here suggested a deeper obsession with the veil's supposed power. Was she seeking its blessing, as the leader had proclaimed, or was she hiding something more sinister? The ceremony reached its climax as the leader lifted the veil from the altar. Holding it aloft, the room fell silent, and Poirot felt a chill, not from any supernatural force, but from the weight of human ambition that permeated the gathering. He leaned closer to Hastings, whispering, "Observe, mon ami. The veil is not the true danger, it is the hearts that covet it." Suddenly, a scream pierced the silence. The circle parted, revealing a figure slumped on the floor, their robes stained with a dark, spreading pool of blood. Gasps rippled through the room, and the leader barked orders to secure the doors. Poirot, ever composed, knelt beside the body, careful to maintain his disguise. The victim was a minor member of the order, a man named Thomas Grayson, whom Poirot recognized from Evelyn's guest list, a quiet scholar with no apparent enemies. His lips were tinged blue, a telltale sign of the same rare poison used on Lady Evelyn. Hastings, pale but resolute, whispered, "Another murder. Poirot, the killer's here, isn't he?" Poirot nodded, his eyes scanning the masked faces. And they strike to protect their secret, the poison. It is no coincidence. We must find its source," the leader demanded, calm, but panic spread among the initiates. Poirot used the chaos to slip closer to the altar, where he noticed a small vial hidden beneath a fold of velvet. It was identical to the one found in Dr. Mortimer's office, its contents shimmering faintly in the candlelight. He pocketed it discreetly, knowing it was the key to linking the murders. The leader announced the ritual's abrupt end, and the members dispersed, their masks hiding their fear or guilt. Poirot and Hastings slipped out into the night, the mist thicker now, cloaking their escape. Back at Poirot's flat, they removed their disguises, and Poirot examined the vial under a magnifying glass. "This poison, mon ami. It is the thread that binds the crimes. The Order's rituals are a fouet for something far more earthly: greed, betrayal, perhaps revenge." Hastings, still shaken, asked, "But who?" Poirot, "Clara, Reginald, Volkov." Poirot's eyes gleam. The shadowed hand moves among them. Hastings. The vial proves the poison comes from within the order, but the hand that wields it remains hidden for now. The next morning, Poirot visited Inspector Japp at Scotland Yard, presenting the vial. Japp, ever pragmatic, sent it for analysis, confirming it contained the same rare toxin used in both murders. "You're stirring up a hornet's nest, Poirot," Japp grumbled. "This order business is bigger than we thought." "Indeed," Poirot replied, "but the nest, it is not so large that the little gray cells cannot find the queen." Poirot returned to the mansion, where he interviewed the servants, seeking details about the order's activities. One maid, trembling, admitted to overhearing Evelyn argue with a masked figure days before her death, mentioning the veil's true power. The maid described the figure's voice as low and commanding, possibly the leader from the ritual. Poirot pressed further, learning that Evelyn had been planning to disband the order, a decision that would have threatened its members' ambitions. Back in his flat, Poirot spread out his notes, connecting the dots. The veil, a forgery as he suspected, was a symbol of control, not curse. The order's leader, likely Reginald or someone close to him, used it to manipulate the initiates. Clara's desperation, Volkov's secrecy, and Mortimer's deceit all pointed to a web of motives. But the poison source was the key. Poirot recalled the jasmine scent, now linked to both Volkov and the ashes in the fireplace. Was Volkov the shadowed hand, or was she another pawn? The day passed in a blur of inquiries. Poirot visited Dr. Mortimer again, probing his knowledge of the poison. Mortimer, nervous, admitted to studying rare toxins for his research but denied using them. His affair with Clara, however, suggested a deeper alliance. Poirot left, unconvinced, and met Hastings at a cafe, where they reviewed the torn photograph. The obscured figure's posture matched the ritual leader's, reinforcing Poirot's suspicion of Reginald's involvement. As night fell, Poirot received a message from Japp. The vial's contents were traced to a smuggler's den in Limehouse, linked to Madame Volkov's past. Poirot smiled grimly. The threads, they tighten. Hastings, tomorrow, we confront the Russian. The confrontation with Volkov was tense. She sat in her opulent drawing room, her jasmine perfume heavy in the air. "I told you, Monsieur Poirot, I was Evelyn's friend," she insisted, her accent thick with emotion. "The order was her passion, not mine." "And yet," Poirot countered, "you knew of the poison. Did you not? The vial from the ritual, it matches your connections in Limehouse." Volkov paled but held her ground. "I smuggled relics. Yes, but never poison. Evelyn trusted me to protect the veil, not to kill for it." Poirot leaned forward, his voice soft but piercing. "Then tell me, madam, who is the shadowed hand?" Volkov hesitated, then whispered, "I do not know their face, but they control the order. Evelyn feared them. She said they would kill to keep the veil's secret." The conversation yielded no confession, but Poirot sensed Volkov's fear was genuine. He left, his mind racing. The shadowed hand was no ghost, it was a person. Cunning and ruthless, hiding behind the order's mystique. The poison, the veil, the ritual all were tools of manipulation. And Clara's presence at the ritual suggested she was closer to the truth than she admitted. Poirot spent the evening poring over the ledger, decoding more entries, payments to be continued. But another initial appeared. See Clara, perhaps. The sums were large, suggesting blackmail or bribery. Poirot's suspicion of Clara deepened. She was no mere heiress, but a player in a dangerous game. The next day, Poirot and Hastings returned to the order's meeting place, now deserted. They searched the altar, finding a hidden compartment containing a list of initiates. Clara's name was there, marked with a crimson sigil, indicating her recent induction. Another name caught Poirot's eye: Thomas Grayson, the second victim. Marked as expendable, the killer was eliminating threats, and Grayson's death was a warning. Poirot's investigation led him to a chemist in Soho, known for handling exotic substances. The chemist, nervous under Poirot's scrutiny, admitted to selling the poison to a cloaked figure weeks earlier. The description matched no single suspect, but the jasmine scent lingered in Poirot's mind. He thanked the chemist and left, his thoughts coalescing back at the mansion. Poirot gathered the suspects for an impromptu meeting, testing their reactions. Reginald was defiant, Clara evasive, Volkov guarded, and Mortimer anxious. Poirot mentioned the poison source. Watching their faces, Clara's eyes flickered, a subtle tell. Poirot filed it away. Knowing the final confrontation was near, the chapter drew to a close as Poirot stood alone in Evelyn's study, the crimson veil on her desk. He touched its edge. Feeling only fabric, not fate, the veil hides the truth. He murmured, echoing Evelyn's note. The poison source was within the order, and the shadowed hand was close. Poirot's escape from the ritual had been narrow, but it had given him the final piece of the puzzle. The killer's identity was almost within his grasp, and the next move would unmask them. Chapter 9. The Shadowed Hand. Hercule Poirot sat in the dimly lit study of the Carlisle mansion, his small, precise hands folded neatly over his polished walking stick. The room was heavy with the scent of old books and wax, the air thick with the weight of secrets yet to be uncovered. Captain Hastings, ever the loyal companion, stood by the fireplace, his brow furrowed as he watched Poirot's meticulous gaze sweep over the torn photograph they had discovered days earlier. The image, now carefully reassembled on the mahogany desk, showed for figures in veiled robes, one face deliberately obscured by a smear of ink. Poirot's eyes gleamed with the quiet intensity of a man who knew he was closing in on the truth. "Mon ami," Poirot said, his voice soft but commanding. "The photograph, it speaks to us, does it not? It whispers of deception, of a truth hidden in plain sight. The shadowed hand. This is no myth, no curse. It is a person, a mind cunning enough to weave this tapestry of murder." Hastings nodded, though his expression betrayed his confusion. "But who, Poirot? We've got Reginald, Clara, Volkov, and Mortimer all tangled in this Order of the Crimson Veil business. And now this photograph. You're saying the obscured figure is the key?" Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile. "Precisement. The face is hidden, but the mind behind it is not. We must look closer, Hastings. The shadowed hand is not merely a name. It is a role, a purpose, and I, Hercule Poirot, shall unmask it." The morning had begun with a flurry of activity. Inspector Japp, his usual gruff demeanor softened by the promise of progress, had arrived at the mansion with a fresh report from Scotland Yard. The poison used in the murder of Lady Evelyn Carlisle and, more recently, the minor order member, Mr. Harold Grayson, had been identified as a rare alkaloid, derived from a plant native to the Nile Delta. Its presence in both murders confirmed a single killer, one with access to exotic substances and the knowledge to wield them. This revelation had sent Poirot's mind into overdrive, piecing together the fragments of the case with the precision of a watchmaker. The torn photograph, now the centerpiece of their investigation, had been found in Evelyn's desk. Its edges, jagged as though ripped in haste, the three visible faces belonged to Evelyn, Madame Irina Volkov, and Dr. Felix Mortimer, all members of the secretive Order of the Crimson Veil. The fourth figure, its face obliterated, was the enigma. Poirot had spent hours studying the photograph, noting the posture, the cut of the robe, the faint outline of a hand clutching a ceremonial dagger. It was this hand, he insisted, that held the key to the killer's identity. Reginald, Poirot mused aloud, tapping the photograph with a manicured finger. Lord Carlisle, the brother who claims to be a victim of circumstance, drowning in debts and resentment, yet his presence in the order. It is curious, non? Why would a man so dismissive of Evelyn's passions join her in this esoteric society? Hastings frowned. "You think Reginald's the shadowed hand? He's got the motive Evelyn's fortune would clear his debts, and he was burning papers the night of the murder. But why the photograph? Why hide his own face? Poirot's eyes twinkled, perhaps because he wished to hide his true role. The Order, Hastings, is not merely a collection of relic enthusiasts. It is a hierarchy, a structure with a leader who commands in the shadows. Reginald, I suspect, is more than a disgraced nobleman. He is a man of ambition, of cunning. But we must test this theory. The plan was set. Poirot, with Japp's reluctant approval, arranged to confront Lord Reginald Carlyle at his London townhouse that afternoon. The meeting was to be a delicate dance. Poirot would probe, question, and observe, all while maintaining the facade of polite inquiry. Hastings, ever eager for action, was tasked with searching Reginald's study for any evidence linking him to the Order or the poison. The townhouse, a grand but faded relic of Reginald's once opulent lifestyle, stood in Belgravia, its facade marked by peeling paint and cracked cornices. Reginald greeted them with a forced smile, his eyes darting nervously as he ushered them into a drawing room cluttered with faded portraits and tarnished silver. He was a tall man, his once handsome features now gaunt from worry, his tailored suit slightly frayed at the cuffs. "Monsieur Poirot," Reginald said, his voice smooth but strained. "To what do I owe this visit? Surely you don't still suspect me in Evelyn's tragic death?" Poirot tilted his head, his expression one of polite curiosity. "Monsieur, I suspect everyone until the truth is revealed. You see, the little gray cells. They demand clarity, and there are inconsistencies in your account of the night of the murder." Reginald's smile faltered. "Inconsistencies? I've told you everything. I was in the ballroom with the other guests when Evelyn was found. Doesn't saw me. Doesn't saw you," Poirot agreed, "but none can account for the 15 minutes before the body was discovered. A servant reported seeing you near Evelyn's study, carrying a bundle of papers. And then, mon ami, there is the matter of the fireplace ashes scented with jasmine, a perfume most curious for a man in your position." Reginald's face paled, but he recovered quickly, forcing a laugh. "Jasmine? You're grasping at straws, Poirot. I burned old letters, nothing more. That's, as you well know. Evelyn's death has left me in a precarious position." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And yet, the Order of the Crimson Veil, your sister's passion, seems to have ensnared you as well. Tell me, Lord Carlyle, what role did you play in this? Society? Were you a mere follower, or something more?" Reginald's hands clenched, but he maintained his composure. "I humored Evelyn's obsession, nothing more. The Order was her folly, not mine." Poirot nodded, as if satisfied, but his mind was racing. The lie was subtle, but it was there, a flicker in Reginald's eyes, a tightening of his jaw. Hastings, meanwhile, had slipped away under the pretense of using the restroom. His real mission to search Reginald's study, the room, located at the end of a dimly lit corridor, was a chaos of papers, books, and artifacts. Hastings moved quickly, his heart pounding as he rifled through drawers and shelves. In a locked drawer, secured with a flimsy pin that yielded to his pocket knife, Hastings found a small leather-bound notebook. Its pages were filled with cryptic symbols and dates, alongside names: Evelyn, Volkov, Mortimer, and others unknown. One entry, dated the night of the murder, read, "The shadowed hand strikes at midnight." Hastings' breath caught. He tucked the notebook into his coat and hurried back to the drawing room, where Poirot was still engaging Reginald in polite but pointed conversation. As they left the townhouse, Hastings shared his find. Poirot's eyes lit up as he examined the notebook, his fingers tracing the ink symbols. "This, Hastings, is the key. The shadowed hand is not a myth, it is a title, a mantle worn by the Order's enforcer. And I believe Reginald wears it." The investigation took a new turn that evening when Poirot, Hastings, and Japp reconvened at Scotland Yard. The notebook's symbols, Poirot deduced, were a cipher based on an ancient Egyptian script, one Evelyn had studied extensively. With the help of a museum cryptographer, Poirot decoded a single line. The veil's power is a lie. This revelation was a bombshell. The Crimson Veil, the centerpiece of the Order's rituals, was a fraud. Its supposed curse, its mystical allure, was a fabrication. Mon Dieu, Poirot murmured, pacing the cramped office. Evelyn knew the veil was a forgery. She threatened to expose it, and in doing so, she signed her own death warrant. The shadowed hand the killer acted to protect the Order's secrets. Japp leaned forward, his skepticism giving way to intrigue. So you're saying Reginald killed her to keep this quiet? But why the second murder? Grayson wasn't even a major player in the Order. Poirot's smile was grim. Grayson, I suspect, knew too much. Perhaps he overheard a conversation or saw something he should not have. The killer could not risk exposure. But we must confirm Reginald's role. We must find the veil's true origin papers, proof of the forgery. The search for the origin papers led them back to the Carlyle mansion, where Poirot had a hunch. Evelyn, ever meticulous, would have kept such documents close, hidden from prying eyes. In her study, behind a false panel in the bookshelf, a discovery made during a previous search, Poirot found a small safe. The combination, deduced from the dates in Evelyn's ledger, yielded a thin folder containing letters, receipts, and a detailed report from a Cairo antiquities dealer. The veil, it confirmed, was a modern creation, crafted to deceive collectors and sold to Evelyn for a fortune. This, Poirot said, holding the papers aloft, is the motive. Evelyn planned to reveal the truth, to dismantle the Order's power, and Reginald, as its secret leader, could not allow it. The final confrontation came that night in the mansion's grand library. Poirot had summoned Reginald under the pretense of discussing new evidence. The Lord arrived, his demeanor a mix of arrogance and unease. Captain Hastings stood by, ready to act. Monsieur Carlyle, Poirot began, his voice calm but unyielding. You have played a clever game. The Order of the Crimson Veil, you led it, not as a follower, but as the shadowed hand itself, orchestrating its rituals, its secrets and its murders. Reginald's laugh was hollow. Absurd, Poirot. You have no proof. Poirot produced the notebook, the decoded cipher, and the origin papers. These, monsieur, tell a different story. The veil, a forgery. Evelyn, a threat to your power. You were in her study that night, burning evidence, but you could not destroy the truth. Your alibi, it crumbles. A servant saw you leave the study minutes before the body was found. You used the hidden passage, did you not, to stage the locked room murder? Reginald's face twisted, his composure breaking. You think you've won, Poirot. Evelyn was a fool, obsessed with her relics, her ideals. She would have ruined everything, my plans, my future. I did what I had to. The confession was brief but damning. Japp stepped forward, handcuffs at the ready. But Poirot raised a hand. One moment, Inspector, Monsieur Carlyle. You deny the murder of Grayson? Reginald's eyes widened, a flicker of fear betraying him. Grayson? I had nothing to do with that. Poirot's gaze was piercing. None. Monsieur, that is where you lie. The poison, the same in both murders. The shadowed hand strikes twice. You will answer for both. As Japp led Reginald away, Hastings turned to Poirot, his voice low. You were brilliant, Poirot. But are you sure it's over? The Order, the veil, there could be more to it. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. For now, mon ami, the truth is unveiled. But the human heart, it is a labyrinth. We shall see what shadows remain. The chapter closed with the mansion silent, the Crimson Veil locked away in a museum vault. Its myths shattered. Poirot, ever the observer of human nature, knew that greed and ambition would always cast new shadows. But for now, the little gray cells had prevailed, and the shadowed hand was no more. Chapter 10. The final unveiling. The grand drawing room of the Carlyle mansion was ablaze with the soft glow of chandeliers, their crystal prisms scattering light across the ornate walls. The air was thick with anticipation, the kind that precedes a storm. Hercule Poirot stood at the center of the room, his diminutive figure commanding the attention of all present. His meticulously groomed mustache twitched slightly, a telltale sign of the mental gears turning within his formidable mind. Around him, the suspects Lord Reginald Carlyle, Clara Beaumont, Dr. Felix Mortimer, and Madame Irina Volkov sat in a semicircle, their faces a mixture of apprehension, defiance, and curiosity. Captain Hastings stood by the fireplace, his notebook clutched tightly, while Inspector Japp leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, his sharp eyes scanning the room. Poirot adjusted his bow tie with deliberate precision, his movements slow and theatrical, as if savoring the moment. "Zamis," he began, his voice clear and resonant, cutting through the tense silence. "We have gathered here tonight to unveil the truth behind the tragic death of Lady Evelyn Carlyle. A death that was no accident, no curse, but a cold, calculated murder." The word murder hung in the air, heavy and accusatory. Clara shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her fingers twisting the hem of her silk dress. Reginald's jaw tightened, his aristocratic features betraying a flicker of unease. Mortimer's hands, usually steady from years of handling delicate artifacts, trembled slightly as he adjusted his spectacles. Only Madame Volkov remained impassive, her dark eyes fixed on Poirot with an intensity that could have pierced steel. Poirot paced slowly, his polished shoes clicking against the polished oak floor. The crimson veil, this so-called relic of an Egyptian priestess, has been the centerpiece of this mystery. It was said to carry a curse, to bring death to those who dared touch it. And yet, I, Hercule Poirot, do not believe in curses. I believe in facts, in evidence, in the workings of the human mind. And it is through these that we shall uncover the killer. He paused, letting his words settle, his gaze sweeping over the assembled group. Let us begin with the scene of the crime. Lady Evelyn was found in her study, a locked room, with the crimson veil draped over her face and her throat slit by a ceremonial dagger. A note in her hand read, "The veil hides the truth to the superstitious." This suggested the curse had struck, but to Poirot, it suggested something far more earthly, a killer who wished to hide their crime behind the veil of superstition. Hastings, ever the eager chronicler, scribbled furiously, his pencil scratching against the paper. Japp, however, raised an eyebrow, his skepticism barely concealed. "Get on with it, Poirot," he muttered under his breath, though loud enough for Hastings to glance at him disapprovingly. Poirot continued, undeterred. The locked room was no mystery at all, a hidden passage, known only to a few, led from the study to the library. This passage, concealed behind the false panel, allowed the killer to enter and exit undetected. But who among you knew of this passage, and who had the motive, the opportunity, and the cunning to orchestrate such a crime? He turned to Lord Reginald, whose posture stiffened under the scrutiny. "Lord Carlyle, you are the estranged brother of Lady Evelyn. Your debts, they are considerable. N'est pas? Gambling, unwise investments. The Carlyle fortune was slipping through your fingers. Evelyn's death, and the inheritance it promised, would have been most convenient." Reginald's face flushed, his voice sharp. "I resent the implication, Poirot. Evelyn and I had our differences, but I would never harm her. Besides, I was in the ballroom with the other guests when she died. So you say," Poirot replied, his tone deceptively mild. "But your alibi is not as solid as you believe. Witnesses recall seeing you leave the ballroom briefly, claiming a need for air, time enough, perhaps, to slip through the passage and commit the deed. And then there is the matter of the burned papers in the fireplace, scented with jasmine, which you claimed were gambling debts. But were they, perhaps, something more incriminating?" Reginald's mouth opened, then closed, his protest dying on his lips. Poirot's eyes gleamed as he turned to Clara Beaumont, whose pale face had grown paler still. Mademoiselle Clara, Poirot said, his voice softening but no less piercing. You are the ambitious niece, the one who stood to inherit everything. If Evelyn's will was rewritten in your favor, you were seen sneaking into the study, searching for the very will you claimed it was to protect your inheritance. But was it not to ensure it? And the jasmine perfume yours, I believe, lingers in the air wherever you go. Clara's eyes flashed with defiance. I loved Aunt Evelyn. I would never hurt her. Yes, I looked for the will, but only because Reginald was scheming to take everything. I had to protect what was rightfully mine. Poirot raised a hand, silencing her. We shall return to you, mademoiselle. For now, let us consider Dr. Felix Mortimer. He pivoted to face the archaeologist, whose fingers gripped the arms of his chair. You, monsieur, authenticated the crimson veil, but your reputation was at stake when its authenticity was questioned. A quarrel with Lady Evelyn, a vial of rare poison found in your office most suspicious, none. And then there is your connection to Mademoiselle Clara, an affair that adds a layer of complexity to your motives. Mortimer adjusted his spectacles, his voice steady but strained. I've told you, Poirot, I was not at the mansion during the murder. My affair with Clara is irrelevant. As for the poison, it was for research, nothing more. Research. Poirot echoed, his tone laced with skepticism. And yet, the poison matches that used to kill Lady Evelyn, a poison so rare. It could only have come from someone with your expertise. Finally, Poirot turned to Madame Volkov, whose enigmatic smile had not wavered. Madame, you are the enigma of this tale. A member of the Order of the Crimson Veil, a confidant of Lady Evelyn, and a woman with a past as a smuggler. Payments in Evelyn's ledger, coded to V, point to you. And the note, beware the shadowed hand. Does it not suggest a connection to the Order's enforcer, a role you might well play? Volkov's laugh was low and throaty. You weave a fascinating tale, Monsieur Poirot, but I am no killer. Evelyn and our allies, protectors of the Veil's secrets. The payments were for my work in the Order, nothing more. Poirot nodded, as if conceding her point, but his eyes betrayed no such agreement. He stepped back, clasping his hands behind his back. Let us now consider the evidence in its entirety. The Crimson Veil, we have learned, is no ancient relic but a modern forgery, crafted to deceive and to fuel the Order's mystique. This knowledge threatened someone in this room, someone whose ambitions depended on the Veil's myth. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. The killer needed to silence Lady Evelyn, who had discovered the forgery and planned to expose it. The killer used the hidden passage, staged the scene with the veil and the dagger, and planted the note to suggest a curse. But the killer made mistakes. The jasmine perfume, the cufflink with the Order's symbol, the burned papers all point to one person. The room was silent now, save for the faint crackle of the fire. Hastings held his breath, his pencil poised. Japp's eyes narrowed, sensing the climax of Poirot's revelation. It is you, Mademoiselle Clara Beaumont, Poirot declared, his voice ringing with certainty. You are the murderer of Lady Evelyn Carlyle. Clara gasped, her hand flying to her chest. That's absurd. I love my aunt. You have no proof, though. But I do, Poirot said, his tone unyielding. Let us reconstruct the crime. You knew of the hidden passage. Having explored the mansion as a child, you slipped away from the soiree, entered the study, and poisoned Lady Evelyn with the rare toxin you obtained through your connection with Dr. Mortimer. The ceremonial dagger was a flourish, meant to suggest a ritualistic killing tied to the Veil's curse. You draped the veil over her face, placed the note in her hand, and escaped through the passage, locking it behind you. Clara's face contorted with rage. This is nonsense. Why would I do such a thing? For greed? Poirot said simply. The will, which you knew named you as the sole heir, was conditional on your leaving the Order. But you believe in the Veil's power, did you not? You saw it as a path to wealth and influence, and Evelyn's plan to expose the forgery threatened that. You killed her to secure the inheritance and to preserve the Order's mystique. He held up a hand, forestalling her protest. The jasmine perfume was your first mistake. It lingered in the study, on the burned papers, and on the cufflink. You planted to frame Lord Reginald. The cufflink, bearing the Order's symbol, was meant to point to him as the shadowed hand, but it was too perfect, too convenient, and the poison only someone with access to Dr. Mortimer's resources could have obtained it. Your affair with him gave you the access. Mortimer's face drained of color, but he remained silent. Clara's eyes darted around the room, seeking an escape, but Jap had already moved closer, his hand resting on his notebook. Poirot continued, relentless. The torn photograph, showing the Order's members, revealed Lord Reginald's role as its secret leader, but it also showed you, Mademoiselle Clara, as a new initiate, desperate for the Veil's blessing. You used the Order's rituals to stage the murder, exploiting the locked room and the curse to deflect suspicion. But the little gray cells of Hercule Poirot are not so easily deceived. Clara's defiance crumbled, her shoulders slumping. You can't prove any of this, she whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. Poirot's smile was almost pitying. On the contrary, mademoiselle, the hidden safe in Evelyn's study contained papers proving the Veil's forgery. Papers you searched for but could not find. The ledger, the perfume, the cufflink, the passage all lead to you, and the second murder of the Order member was your attempt to silence another who knew too much. But you underestimated Poirot. Jap stepped forward, his voice gruff. Clara Beaumont, you're under arrest for the murder of Lady Evelyn Carlyle and the unnamed Order member. He produced a pair of handcuffs, the metallic click echoing. In the silent room as he secured her wrists, Clara's eyes filled with tears. But whether they were of remorse or frustration, no one could say. She was led away, her head bowed, as the other suspects watched in stunned silence. Poirot turned to the remaining group. The Crimson Veil will be returned to the British Museum, where it belongs not as a relic, but as a reminder of human folly. The Order of the Crimson Veil will dissolve, its secrets laid bare, and you, Ms. Amos, must live with the truths revealed tonight. Reginald, Mortimer, and Volkov exchanged uneasy glances, each grappling with their own complicity in the events. Hastings closed his notebook, his expression a mixture of awe and exhaustion. Another triumph for the little gray cells. Poirot, he said, attempting a smile. Poirot inclined his head. The mind, Hastings, is the greatest tool of all. It sees what the eyes cannot, hears what the ears miss, and it always finds the truth. As the group dispersed, Poirot lingered by the fireplace, staring into the flames. The case had been complex, a tapestry of greed, deception, and superstition. But it was unraveled, thread by thread, by the meticulous logic of his mind. He turned to leave, his steps light, his heart content. The Carlyle mansion, once a stage for tragedy, was quiet now, its secrets laid bare. Back at his flat in London, Poirot settled into his favorite armchair, a cup of tisane in hand. The city outside buzzed with life, but within these walls, there was peace. Hastings, ever loyal, sat across from him, recounting the case's twists and turns with boyish enthusiasm. You know, Poirot, Hastings said, leaning forward, I thought for sure it was Reginald. The debts, the burned papers, it all seemed to point to him. Poirot chuckled, a rare sound that warmed the room. Moaned Cher Hastings, you see the surface, but you must learn to see beneath. The truth is always there, waiting for those who seek it. Hastings grinned, undeterred by the gentle rebuke. Well, I suppose that's why you're the detective and I'm the chronicler. Another case closed, another mystery solved. Poirot sipped his tisane, his eyes twinkling. For now, Hastings. But the world is full of mysteries, and the little gray cells, they are always ready. The fire crackled softly, casting shadows on the walls, and outside, the London night carried on, oblivious to the triumph of one small Belgian detective. whose mind had once again prevailed over the darkness of human nature.